You hit record, right?
We hit record right now.
Oh, okay. I'll repeat that.
Multi audio.
Did you?
It's on now.
It's not, it is on now. Okay. Let's call this meeting to order at 6:36 p.m. I'm gonna put a reminder in the chat to everybody who's joining us virtually to please, sign the attendance sheet. Thank you to everyone who's here in person. Welcome to CEC 15 May calendar meeting. Today is Tuesday, May 27th, 2025. I am CEC President Antonia Ferraro Martinelli, and we are coming to you live from PS 896 in their beautiful new upper school. This is an amazing space. I'm going to call the roll. Antonia Ferraro, I'm here, yes. Leslie King is absent. Vanessa Gonzalez Mioca, I'm not sure if she is going to attend. Nancy Cruz said she would be late. Katina Rogers, here. Jonathan Davis.
Here.
Hey, Jonathan. Hans Arietta absent, Denal Brashani's absent, Nancy Randall's absent, and I believe Kwame said he was on his way, so we'll mark them in as they arrive. We do not have quorum, so we will not be able to hold any votes unless people arrive. And I will pass it over to Katina Rogers to read the introduction.
Thank you all for coming to the District 15 Community Education Council tonight. We appreciate your time and we're glad that you could join us. For those of you who may be new to CEC meetings, there are 32 CECs throughout the city, plus 4 citywide councils. Each CEC represents a community school district, and each is made up of 12 volunteer members, 10 of whom are elected by parents in the district. The remaining 2 are appointed by the Brooklyn Borough President, plus 2 high school student members. CEC 15 is a state-mandated public body responsible for ensuring that public school parents and the public have input in educational decisions that are made at the school district level. Our council reviews education policies and advocates for high-quality education that benefits all of our District 15 public elementary and middle school students. CEC 15 serves 38 elementary and middle schools, 3 pre-K sites, and 1 high school under the oversight of our superintendent. CEC members serve in an advisory role on education matters to the district superintendent, the chancellor of the Department of Education, and to state and city elected officials. We approve district school zoning lines submitted by the Department of Education. We evaluate our district superintendent. We review the district's educational programs, and we support school leadership teams. We also submit recommendations for the School Construction Authority's annual capital plan. And as of recent amendments to the law, CECs advise in the selection of parent coordinators. We actively seek input and feedback from the public and encourage you to visit our website, cecd15.org, and write to us about any issues you may want to address or learn about. Each school has a CEC liaison. All of our names and contact information are available on our website. Just a reminder to please sign the attendance sheet if you're here in person, or those of you online, there's a link in the chat. Pass to Jonathan.
Great. So tonight's public comment protocol. Tonight's calendar meeting is in person and will include a public comment period. We will take both remote and in-person comments to gather additional feedback from our families and school community members. You may leave your camera on, or for your own privacy, if you prefer, you may use audio only during the comment period and throughout the meeting. Rules of engagement. When you comment, please comment on the topic. Respect the privacy of others, and please do not include names of children or staff. Guests who make inappropriate comments will be removed from the meeting. During the public comment period, those attending virtually may raise their hand to comment or indicate in the chat that they would like to speak. Those called upon will be unmuted. If you are attending in person, you must sign the guest attendance sheet and indicate whether you would like to comment. Speakers will be called on one at a time and will be allowed 1 minute each for comment. We will hear as many speakers as the time allows. It is possible that not every comment and/or question will be given time, so the best way to get your question answered is always to write to the CEC at cec15@schools.nyc.gov. CEC members will also be given a comment period. Members will be called upon and are each permitted 1 2-minute comment and/or question. If members do not have a comment, they may cede their time to the chair.
Hey, thank you so much. And we'll turn it over to the interpreters to introduce themselves. First up, let's have the Spanish interpreter.
Buenas noches, la reunión de esta noche contará con interpretación al español. Para accesarlo, solo marque desde su teléfono el 347-966-4114, seguido del número de ID de la reunión 528-108-957, tecla numeral. Una vez más, el teléfono es 347-966-4114, ID de la reunión 528-108-957, tecla numeral. Estaremos colocando también la información en el chat para referencia. Gracias. End of Spanish announcement.
Thank you so much. And Mandarin?
各位家长大家好哈，如果需要听中文或者国语的话呢，你可以拨打347-966-4114，然后 ID 号码是563-586-144重复一次哈，请拨打347-966-4114 ，ID 号码是563-586-144谢谢Vendor announcement complete.
And Bangla?
Thank you. The following message will be for Bangla participants. আপনারা যারা আজকে অনুষ্ঠানটি শুনতে চান সেক্ষেত্রে বাংলায় শুনতে হলে আপনাদেরকে ফোন থেকে ডায়াল করতে হবে 347-966-4114 এবং কনফারেন্স আইডি দিবেন 772-105-016 আবার বলছি ফোন নাম্বারটি হবে 347-966-4114 এবং পিন অথবা কনফারেন্স আইডি দেবেন 772-105-016 ধন্যবাদ। Thank you. Bangladesh.
Thank you so much. So yes, as I said, we're here at PS 896, the School for Creativity and Innovation in Sunset Park. We're in this new amazing space. Principal Ruth Rodriguez is here with us. I love your marimbas and your bongos and your ukuleles. It seems like you're really having a jam band in here.
We have a concert.
Oh, okay. Why don't you want to come up and share? Sure. Sure.
Welcome to our upper school. This is year 7 for us, and this is year 2 in this space. It's been a roller coaster, and we're up to 321 students this school year. 27% of those students are students with disabilities, and 50% of those students are English language learners, and they call our school home. We do have our music program, which, like I said, on Thursday, we do have our end of year concert. We also have expanded to include a visual arts program with our art presentation happening the week of June 16th. And then just recently, we got funding for a very short dance program that's going to be having what they call a ballroom bash on June the 9th. So our kids are getting lots of opportunities to try things outside of the classroom and really engage in learning in different ways. So we're really excited and welcome you to our space. It's about 90% complete. So there are lots of things that still need to get done, some which are obvious and some that are not so obvious.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
But welcome to our space and thank you for coming.
What is it finished?
So in this space alone,
Okay.
no curtains,
Oh.
no railing, no
Okay.
bleachers, still getting done.
Okay,
Basketball hoops not installed, the floor is not finished.
okay.
On the outside, the schoolyard's not done and the fencing around it is not complete. And then in classrooms, little things like handles on doors in the inside, not on the outside, that would be not safe. Different closets, so the teachers are always like, I can have a handle or something to lock the door. And then just like little things,
Punch list.
punch list items, yeah, but the bigger ticket items are in this space and in the schoolyard.
Okay, well, we're glad you're in the space.
Yeah.
Anyway.
We're happy to be in it and we're pretty much using almost all the space except for one classroom, and then next year we're basically at capacity.
Well, thank you for allowing us to have our meeting here.
Anything?
Yeah. And we have Rob Aguilar from, Councilwoman, Avila's office. We have some announcements, or, his colleague has some announcements. Come on up.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Kate Brown, also from Councilmember Avila's office. We're really happy to be here tonight. We just have a couple of very quick announcements for you on updates of what we've been working on recently. So coming up, we have the tax lien sale. The deadline was extended till June 2nd, which is next week though. So just a reminder to anybody, if for property owners, if you have any outstanding taxes from or water bills, sewer and emergency repairs, if you owe any money from that, those liens have the chance to be sold starting on June 2nd. So there's 3 separate ways the council has pushed to be able to help you pay those debts. The first one is to go online and pay at least the minimum amount owed. The second is you could apply for an exception, or you could also enter into a payment agreement to prevent inclusion at all into lien sale. For more information about that, you can just go online to the New York City's Department of Finance, which is nyc.gov/site/finance. Or you could also go in person to the Brooklyn Business Center, which is located at 210 Berlin Street. A couple of exciting legislation updates we have. We've been working to help create more transparency with the Economic Development Corporation, EDC. There's a couple bills that the council member just passed, 860, which will help establish an annual community hiring report. And that would just, help require the NYC EDC to provide more metrics and more data for us for goals to establish under community hiring programs. And also descriptions of efforts by VCs, developers, and other parties to fulfill commitments under the community hiring program when the goals are not met. The other one, Intro 861, is just making sure that under annual reporting, we are seeing community benefits agreements described in EDC's annual reporting. So thank you to every constituent who reached out about these subjects, and we're excited to see EDC be more transparent as we work on future projects with them. And a quick update, as you all know, probably we are in budget season right now, and despite our mayor saying that we probably have the best budget ever, there are a lot of, loose ends we're still trying to tie up on our end, and even with that, we also have unfortunately some, large cuts that we're seeing from the federal administration. And a couple of them that we're especially concerned about right now are having after school programming cut. We've gotten a lot of responses from the community about, concern about that. And it's something that we're aware of and continuing to try to, support the community through, and other programs that are just going to be impacting children in our district. We're just aware of these federal cuts and how we need to take them seriously. And please do reach out to us. We're on 417 4th Avenue if you ever have any questions or need our support. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So on to some updates. You all know CEC election sort of closed for voting period closed, and we look forward to getting those results in June. Our CEC still has 2 vacancies on the council, one for the parent of an English language learner, and the other for the parent of a District 75 student. I'm going to go ahead and put my entire President's report in the chat if people want to follow along, because there's a lot of links in my report that people can go to, including a link for applications for vacancies on council. Our CEC is in the midst of its annual evaluation of the superintendent. It's one of our mandated duties. And so the public is encouraged to participate in the evaluation. They can provide feedback through this form that I'm also going to put in the chat as well. It's also in my in my president's report. So the public can also give some feedback. All of your feedback and CEC 15 member feedback is submitted to both the superintendent and the DOE, and the council will discuss more about that later. We have, next month, we have 2 more meetings, a business meeting on June 10th and June 17th. And then May is Jewish American Heritage Month, Asian American, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, as well as Military Appreciation Month. This month, our chancellor announced that she was honoring Jewish Americans by announcing the publication of Hidden Voices, Jewish Americans in United States History, Volume 1. This resource will be distributed to all schools for the 2025-26 school year, with 5 districts concurrently participating in a pilot to provide feedback and strengthen the use of these resources in classrooms. As always, I have some banned books here. The first one is Mouse by Art Spiegelman. It's his Pulitzer Prize-winning graphic novel depicting the Holocaust. Spiegelman considers himself the poster boy for books being censored. This book was removed from 8th grade curriculum by vote of the school board in Tennessee for rough language and a single panel showing the dead body of a woman following her suicide. And unfortunately, suicide is a terrible and seldom discussed aspect of the survivor story. I will just tell you, I was part of a dance troupe a long time ago that performed a ballet called Shema, which means listen in Hebrew. And it was a story of the choreographer's family who survived the Holocaust only for the patriarch to commit suicide. So it's, you know, an unfortunate part of the story. On a lighter note, I have The Boy Who Thought Outside the Box by Marcy Wessel. This book was banned as well in Pennsylvania because a handful of parents deemed the book reflecting different cultures as Marxist. The book is the real life story of Ralph Baer, who experienced bullying and discrimination as a boy in Nazi Germany, but his family emigrated to New York City in 1938, and he grew up to invent the video game. And then I also have some banned books to honor AAPI heritage. We have Drawn Together, which is also a graphic novel, which depicts a boy and his Vietnamese-speaking grandfather finding common ground through drawing. And this is one of my favorite quotes. Right when I gave up on talking, my grandfather surprised me by revealing a world beyond words. So you can see it's a really fun and well illustrated book. And then we have A Different Pond by Bao Phi, who is a Caldecott honor book about a boy and his immigrant father having conversations about a distant place in time during an early morning fishing trip. Both of these books were part of the same donation of books that was banned in 2022 in Northampton, Pennsylvania. All right, on to other updates. A new building for Brooklyn Rise Charter School in Sunset Park. So I attended Community Board 7's May 21st meeting, and I spoke in opposition to the building of Brooklyn Rise. This new building that Brooklyn Rise Charter intends to lease from a developer They signed a 35-year lease. The building is going to be built on a gas station. And the charter also intends to expand to a middle school. The developer has begun demolition, but the construction is pending an environmental review. There were other speakers who spoke in opposition to locating this charter in Sunset Park. They cited concerns related to the location being on a gas station. They cited that this is an existing corridor of schools within this 4 blocks of this space. There are 6 different schools, including 136, MS 821. Those are 2 middle schools immediately across the street from this location. There's also the middle school at 428. There's PS 24, PS 516, and there is already an existing charter school, Brooklyn Prospect Charter, which also serves middle school students, all within 4 blocks. Speakers also cited demographic decline and the competition in a declining pool of children. The cost, the DOE has to pay the developer for the lease on this brand new building. And they also cited academics as a concern. Brooklyn Rise is not serving English language students as well as the district. And in fact, they are 11 points below the district. So in my report, I have links to both CB7's May board meeting and as well as their interview with Brooklyn Rise Charter on May 1st. CB7 did announce that in the effort to support transparency, they will be scheduling another meeting for the public to comment on this school and this new development, and I will let you all know as soon as they announce that. And I hope the public attends this meeting and speaks out in large numbers. PEP updates. Interviews were held last week for candidates for the Brooklyn PEP parent representative. There were 2 candidates, Faraji Hannah-Jones and Dr. Miriam Bengi-Ellis. The presidents of the CECs will vote to select between the 2 candidates. That voting has opened, and it concludes on May 31st. The video was shared with all of the members, so please send me any feedback you have on those candidates. The next PEP meeting is Wednesday, May 28th at 6 p.m. at Michael J. Petrini's school, which is in Sunset Park. As always, speaker sign up begins at 5:30 and closes at 6:15. But whether you can attend in person or not, you can also send written testimony to all 24 PEP members via the link that is in my president's report. Librarians Equal Literacy had a success at the beginning of the month. Their bill, Intro 1125, the Librarians Count Bill, passed unanimously in the New York City Council. So congratulations to them. Brooklyn Borough President Antonio Reynoso is announcing the release of Borough Hall's 2025 graduation awards. If you are a Brooklyn public school, charter school, or private school, you can apply to nominate students for this award. There are 3 different awards, and submissions will be open until this Thursday, May 29th. So there is information and links on that in my report. Also coming up June 5th at 10:30 a.m., there is a rally in front of City Hall sponsored by PIF NYC, New York City Comptroller Brad Lander, Public Advocate Giovanni Williams, New York Appleseed, and Advocates for Children. They are encouraging folks to rally to let our elected officials know that all means all, that education programs are not universal, they are not equitable if they continue to exclude students with disabilities. And they're particularly concerned about after-school programs that don't have pathways to include students with disabilities, busing, contracts, greater building accessibility, and seats for preschool students with special education needs. So I have a link in my report if you would like to attend that rally. All right, New York State budget update. Hochul's bell-to-bell smartphone ban did make it into the final budget. I have a link to an explainer on that bill. Some takeaways are that students who need their phones for language translation or caregiver responsibilities could qualify for exemptions. Phones without internet access are still allowed. Schools that allow students off campus for lunch may give students their phones when they're out of the building. Hochul allocated $13.5 million to support local school districts to implement this ban, but the Office of Budget Management estimates it will cost $25 million in New York City alone. Quick foundation aid recap. Governor Hochul will invest at least $37 billion towards education, but as a result of adjustments to the state's foundation aid formula, New York City will still receive hundreds of millions of dollars less than it would have received under the previous formula. We did end up getting $30 million restored by expanding the weight for English language learners, but because the regional cost index for New York City was not adjusted, New York City came up short by hundreds of millions of dollars, over $300 million. According to what I read, Westchester was the only county that got its regional cost index adjusted, and my understanding is that Westchester is somehow tied to the rest of the Hudson Valley, and if there's such a disparity between like Rockland, Orange, and Westchester that they had to adjust Westchester, or it would have impacted Orange, Rockland, and the other counties negatively. So Westchester managed to get their regional cost index adjusted. There's links in my report, and you can read about it. And if you really want to dive into this, Alliance for Quality Education is holding a state budget mass call this Thursday, May 29, at 6:30. They're going to explore what happened and where do we go from here. There's a link in my report. You can RSVP to join that Zoom call. And in my continuing segment called Federal Government Watch, Trump's cuts to AmeriCorps hit Sunset Park after schools. You just heard our city council people talk about. Basically what happened is in April, the Center for Family Life learned that more than $200,000 of the program's AmeriCorps funding had been slashed for the remainder of this year, and then it lost another $750,000 for next year. And this funding supports 54 AmeriCorps volunteers just in the Center for Family Life here in Sunset Park. And they help with the educational enrichment, and it covers a stipend for volunteers who mostly come from the neighborhood. And it goes towards their college tuition. So without these volunteers, there could be hundreds fewer slots at after-school programs across Sunset Park. The House of Representatives passed a federal voucher program. This has to go to the Senate, so. The proposal would use the federal tax code to offer vouchers that students could use to attend private, secular, or religious schools, even in states where voters have opposed such efforts. Critics point out that private schools do not have to comply with the Individuals for Disabilities Education Act, which is IDEA, to provide free and appropriate public education known as FAPE. They're not obligated to educate any and all students, and they can turn away those with disabilities. Now, this budget goes to the Senate. Links in my report. But there is good news. A federal judge last week blocked the Trump administration from firing thousands of workers at the Department of Education, ruling that the announced terminations were a thinly veiled effort to dismantle the entire department without congressional approval. In addition to blocking the firings, the judge's order bars the Department of Education from transferring its functions to other agencies and from carrying out Trump's executive order to close the department altogether. The order also requires the department to reinstate employees terminated since Trump's inauguration, to restore the department to the status quo, such that it is able to carry out its statutory functions. More links in my report. Okay, and finally, this is the most consequential education news. New York City mayoral primary is June 24th. This is the only thing that matters. Forget November. November doesn't matter. The decision is made in June. Whoever wins will become the mayor in November. Early voting begins June 14th and ends June 22nd. This is a ranked choice primary. So similarly to the high school ranking process, you rank the candidates as you like them. So if you don't like a school for any reason, maybe your kid doesn't want to travel there, maybe you don't like its track record, you don't rank it. You only rank the schools that you want. You only rank the mayor you can live with. And that concludes my update.
November matters.
Barely.
There's
A little
there's
bit.
a wrinkle.
There's a wrinkle in
But I
this
don't
one.
think
I
we
don't
can
know
get
about the wrinkle.
One candidate is saying that they will run as independent.
Oh, are they? Oh, I didn't know about that wrinkle.
Yeah.
That's interesting. But June is important. Well, stay tuned.
June is super important, but November may also.
Okay, so now we know. All right, we're going to move on to our superintendent's report. Welcome, Superintendent Alvarez. Wherever you want, here, like, where do you want to see that, or where is it that?
No, it doesn't matter, wherever you want me. They can hear me here?
But you want to speak to them, right? So,
Yeah, let me sit up there.
Come over here.
I'm gonna be calling, Principal Big, shortly.
Okay.
Hi, good evening, everyone. So let's get started. Next slide. Just celebrating, honoring the month of May. We had a lot of things, our principal appreciation, teacher appreciation week, Mother's Day, Asian Pacific American Heritage, Jewish American Heritage Month, mental health awareness. The Chancellor has done something recently around that as well. And then our Memorial Day, which is yesterday, remembering and honoring those that serve so that we can have the things that we have here in our country. Next slide. In the upcoming month, we have Juneteenth, Flag Day, which is June 14th, Father's Day, Pride Month, and Eid, this coming up in the month of June. Among closing out the school year, graduation, proms, and everything else that goes with that for our schools. So in the agenda, I'm really going to talk about district celebrations. I know last month you asked me about the attendance teacher information, so I have a slide for you to give you some basic information about the impact that the attendance teachers have had across the district. Building capacity through literacy leadership, that's going to be big, talking about some of the work she's doing with her school and how we're going to try to elevate that work across the district and other schools. And then other work that she's also been doing across the district around transitioning bilingual special ed ELs and how we're trying to move that. And then some upcoming events that we have. And so in terms of celebrations, 2 slides forward. District 15 gave away 1,000 pairs of sneakers and socks to families across the entire district at all of our schools. These are some of the sneakers, all different types of brands from donated by Souls for Souls that I have a partnership with. I had it when I was in District 7. We gave about 2,500 sneakers to students there. And so they like the way we work because they just send you literally 1,000 shoes. You have to coordinate with all your schools to figure out whose feet fit those shoes that they send you. And we had ranges from very small sneakers to size 13. So who knew that there's some students who wear a size 14? So we had to find some special shoes as well. So we're happy about that and being able to give to our community. Our next slide, we did our District 15 STEM Exploration Day on May 10th. This was at Harbor High School on Governor's Island, an amazing day where we had renowned scientists working with students across our district from grades 4 to 12 and doing not only the science work that they do, but the experiments that go with it. And the kids got to explore that and then explore the rest of the island throughout the day. So that was an amazing, amazing day. That's really the next two slides. We're at 896. So I just wanted to share some of the things that Principal Rodriguez has done with her staff during Staff Appreciation Week from May 6th to the 10th. I missed those days, but I wish I was here for that luncheon because the food looks amazing there. And I also like the painting. It soothes me and relaxes me, especially during a stressful day. For those of you who don't know, when I'm bored, I start doodling. So it's the same thing with feeling like it's relaxing. So it's just a good thing. And then on the next slide, we were able to celebrate the success of our Lion King performance that we had in the month of April. And so we ended up getting all the students tickets to go see Lion King. They're going on June 12th at 7 p.m. And we have several parents, every single student going, the teachers involved, the parents that were heavily involved, and then some additional parents will be going. So we have approximately 110, 112 people going to Lion King on June 12th. They gotta get some good seats, orchestra seats, mezzanine seats close to the front. So we're excited about this and being able to give this experience to them. In terms of the attendance teachers, on that slide, you're gonna see comparisons. So district attendance in 23-24 at this time was 92.7. This year it's at 93.2, even with the decrease in attendance in the month of January and February due to the change in administration and policies, we still managed to stay higher up. In terms of chronic absenteeism, we're at 20.5%, where last year we're at 23.7% at this time. So we are at 3% increase in terms of the number of students who are coming to school that are less likely to be chronically absent. So that's amazing. You asked about the home visits that the attendance teachers were making this year. To date, and this is as of Friday, we had 426 visits during the evening and weekend times. This is not including the times that they go during the school day. This is just me reporting to you on the times that were past their working hours. So we had 426 visits, and that could clearly attest to the 3% increase for the chronic absenteeism, the 3% decrease in chronic absenteeism, I should say, and the one approximately half to 0.7% increase in our district attendance. That's a big deal. We have moved from 6 schools last year having below 90% attendance to now only having 3 schools below 90% attendance. One of those schools is one of our newer schools. Kindergartners, pre-K usually get sick a lot more, and parents are more likely to keep them home. So that 4, 5, 6 is one of those particular schools. So we know that that's working better, and she's been doing a better job. We also have 124 and PF15. Those are the 3 schools that fell under the 90%. But even though they fall under 90%, they're still above 87%. So they're ranging between 87 and 89%. So that's still relatively high compared to other schools across the city and across the other districts within Brooklyn and also across the boroughs. And then we have no students unaccounted for. So what that means is children transfer to schools, they're in different locations, and sometimes they register at school, and then that's the last time you see them. And some districts and some schools across the city still have students that are not accounted for, which means they still don't have a first attending. Or they've been registered, but they still haven't attended school since they've been registered, right? And that can be for a lot of reasons. We've accounted for all of our students across our district, so we're happy that we're at 0 students. So hopefully that gave you some insight as to the attendance and how we've been working with attendance going forward. And if you want more information, we can go into that at the next meeting. I want to invite Principal Figueroa from Harbor Middle School. She's going to talk a little bit about the building capacity through our literacy leadership. As she goes through that, there's obviously 2 slides that I have here, so I'm going to go through those 2 slides and then talk about the work that she's doing. So if you go to the next slide. So I talked to you all about, is this it? Yeah. I talked to you all about Horton Gillingham and really the foundations of literacy and really thinking about separate and apart from the curricula that we're using as our main reading curriculum. There are also other forms of curricula such as foundation, PAF, UFly. These are all foundational skills literacy programs. This connects to another shift in the shifts that we're looking at as we think about literacy across our district. So next year, we're going to be focusing heavily on the foundational skills grades, K through 2. Actually, I keep saying that, but it's really pre-K through 2 that we're working through. So I just wanted to share what we've already started. So we have 8 district team members who are participating, 14 schools represented, 9 principals and 4 assistant principals, 10 coaches and lead teachers across our district that we were able to get into our first leadership cohort. They went through 5 full days of training on Orton Gillingham, and if you don't know what that is, really what it's doing is covering the K to 2 foundational scope and sequence of what's expected in K through 2 foundational literacy, as well as multisensory and explicit instruction. There's also an advanced course where some of the principals and APs are already involved in, and that's a 4-day course that includes 24 hours of practice. It's upper elementary and middle school application. So this is phonics and grammar, vocabulary and writing, morphology of language. And the reason why this is slightly different is because when you're thinking about middle school students, you don't want to try to teach middle school kids how to tap words. That's not going to roll well for their self-esteem and for being in a classroom with other adolescents. And so this is a different approach of how we teach foundational skills with content knowledge around language that they already acquired, but need to master even further. And so it's more about shared language and expectations across our district. We're really trying to strengthen our tiers 1 through 3 practices. And then we want to make sure that leaders are ready to provide immediate action and next steps to teachers. So in other words, rather than giving feedback of, well, it would be great to see you working in a group, they can be very explicit on what they want that group to do and give them explicit feedback. Just so that you know, we're also working on developing a guide that provides foundational skills in the pillars of literacy across our district for our teachers so that they can click on a button and actually see how to teach that, like phoneme segmentation fluency or first letter sound or last letter sound. What are the different strategies to teach that? So here's the skill and here are the strategies you can use by giving the visuals. And then we have videos that are going to be connected to that. In addition to that, we're trying to create one-pagers for each of those pillars of literacy for our parents, similar to what we did with the literacy guide, the strategic plan for literacy that we gave out to our community. We're planning on doing that for September. We're going to start off with the 3 areas first, since my foundational skills is the most prioritized for me. While foundational skills does include some ability to have vocabulary and comprehension, for the purposes of this guide, because it's massive, we're going to start off with the 3 main ones for foundational skills, which is phonemic awareness, the phonics, and the fluency that goes connected to it. But we will be getting to the other 3, which would be the vocabulary, comprehension, and then also writing. So just wanted to be aware of that. The bonus for the first cohort is they were able to have, and you could see that, we had an administrative Socratic seminars to kind of bridge the learning with real-time leadership decisions. So they shared experiences of what students were going through, they practiced those skills, and then they were able to talk amongst each other as leaders to identify what would be some next steps you would give to a teacher around this particular skill. Why choose this versus that? And just having discussions around it. This is just better to get our school leaders more familiarized with the foundational skills. When you're running a school, you're running the operations and the instructional and then everything else in between. And so it can be very difficult, for example, if you were a leader in middle school but came to elementary school to be a principal, to really understand those foundational skills. So we want to make sure that every single leader in our school is aware of the foundational skills that teachers need, so that they know what to look for and where to find the gaps, if that makes sense. So that's the work we're doing. I just wanted to share some kind of updates of where we are with that work already, even though we haven't even started that work until we're not even starting that work until next year, but we started to preview this work. School leaders are going to have to choose between IMSE or Edward Orton Gillingham to start getting the teachers trained, as I shared last month. We're going to prioritize special ed teachers first with their counterpart gen ed teachers, and then we're going to prioritize ENL and bilingual teachers. Immigrant teachers will come, but they'll come after. And the reason why is because as a district, we're struggling the most with our students with IEPs as well as our L students. So I'm prioritizing the approach we're taking with training, because this is more of like a 2 to 3 year plan around training. So we want to make sure that we give those who need the most support around these skill sets to have those first. And so that's why we're prioritizing that. So now in the next slide, I'm gonna pass it over to Fig, who's really gonna talk about synthesizing the DCEP, which is priority 2 and priority 3. And Fig.
Come on down.
And when I say priority 2 and priority 3, I'm talking about literacy as well as social emotional wellness. And so that's what Fig is gonna jump in. So go ahead, next slide.
Thank you for that. So what we are going, first of all, this is my wellness team. And we need wellness for our eyes, which is why we are standing so close to the board. We cannot see them so far away. So that's over here. In addition to really talking to y'all about a very important piece that lives very close to our heart over at Harbor Middle. We've been investigating how to write quality IEPs quite a while now, right? So there's been pre-work that we've really tried to do very intensively because the students that we have the need for a collaborative approach. We cannot do individual IEPs, just having one particular person investigating their needs. There needs to be a team of people. And we've noticed that in our school, that's the approach that works well. So we are promoting that across the district. So individual education plans that provide a cohesive, coordinated approach. Before I begin, I just want to give you the evolution of the middle school. So 2018 to 21, Big shows up at the school, right? And so I'm like, what do I do now, right? It's a community in need. I need to make sure that it remains open. We do some story action research. The school remains open. Within the context of doing that work, I'm building community partnerships with folks, bringing people in, right? Hiring new teachers, really making sure that folks are understanding the vision and mission of the school, collaborating cohesively with everyone in the school and the Harbor High School to ensure that there is a partnership that threads not only the community, but maritime curriculum as well. And we begin to transform the school. 22-23, we rebrand the school. We are now a maritime school. We're offering mission centered interdisciplinary curriculum with a deep project-based focus. 23-24. Student activities now expand and include partnerships with DLP, right? We career training opportunities for book and boat works, where we're actually making boats in the middle of the classroom and then sailing. And then students start leadership programs, news team, student council, and other student section clubs, right? That really engage students in the work. Now, fast forward to 24-25. Our focus priority goes deeper with special education, right? We're writing IEPs and we're noticing that students need individualized support. What does that mean? We begin to investigate SDI, especially design and construction, which is a research-based practice. Within the context of investigating it as a school, we're trying to figure out how we can create an approach for individual students that also marries a project-based learning approach. And that's difficult. It's not easy, right? Especially design and construction really requires a lot of routines, very specific targeted instruction for that child. And project-based learning is very engaging and sometimes seems like organized chaos. Now, Harbor Middle School then finds out that under state review again for Black students having special education needs. So although we're doing all of the work to engage the students, we're starting to see that our students are growing and even reaching proficiency levels. A small portion of students that are still struggling are Black students with IEPs. So we need to investigate that even further using SDI. 25-26, upcoming year, we are proposing to the superintendent to become an official leadership for Harbor High School using the CTE approach, right? Because that's really where we align our vision and mission.
Next slide.
Okay, this is Harbor's Public Education Leadership Project with Help. So this is a collaborative way that we create IEPs and support our students social, emotionally, and academically. So I'm speaking with special education team, which is a crew of teachers, related service providers, parents, the students themselves, and of course administration. We conduct collaborative special education meetings. We even offer one-to-one special education meetings where we sit with the teacher to help design their lessons. We work on IEP writing to create IEPs with fidelity. We have our school psychologists involved all the time reviewing IEPs to make sure they're written with fidelity. We hold case studies with teachers and related service providers to support in for students. We have our general education teachers also involved, weekly student intervention team meetings. We have community family partnerships. We always have administration involved and we have intervention. So personalized learning time for reading and math to really close the gap in both those subjects.
Now, the wellness team, and we have, again, this is our team fraction of it. Not everyone is here, obviously, but Nikki is an administrative intern working at the school this year. She's done fabulous work to really align this work to what she's learning. And Alfredo is our counselor, one of our counselors, but really leads a lot of the work. Did you want to run through the?
Yeah, so another, again, I'm Alfredo, guidance counselor. So another domain of our work within this framework is our wellness team meetings. So our wellness team at Harvard is comprised of our guidance counselor, included, our social worker, our art therapist, administration. And what our work entails is we have weekly team meetings where we meet collaboratively discuss our students, especially our students that are presenting some problematic behaviors that we need to address. We monitor various sources of data, including our post system, which is how we track problematic, repeated problematic behaviors in the classroom. And we collaborate to devise interventions that we can put in place within the classroom, within our counseling spaces. We provide opportunities for restorative reflection, restorative conversations with students and staff. Beyond that, there's always wellness team members that collaborate on the CEC meetings with special education providers, school psychologists, social workers. We collaborate with families and provide support for families with students who are struggling. We collaborate with teachers to provide consultation if they're experiencing struggles with management behaviors in classrooms, and a lot of times that will also include us visiting classrooms to provide hands-on support, observe, and advise teachers. We devise leadership opportunities like our Harvard News program, the student-led news that is live every morning on YouTube. I encourage you to check it out. We have great students. And we also, an important part is that we have an advisory curriculum. Each student in our school has 2 periods of week of advisory. The wellness team members not only create that curriculum, but also teach many of the advisory classes, and that provides us with opportunities not only to provide social and emotional learning opportunities for students, but to also teach and reinforce our school policies and procedures that support positive behavior development.
But district support, of course, the district always supports us, but part of what we're trying to propose here is to continue to support through professional development around trauma-informed practices, supporting leadership and teachers on students that struggle with executive functioning. So we need some staff training and some training on restorative practices and casual framework, standards for advisory, coaching on SCI and collaboration through partnership, and supporting with project-based learning and expansion.
Pilot district project. So this pilot aims to improve math achievement and reduce suspensions for Black students with IEPs in 3 District 15 schools, combining SEL teams and IEP teams using a wellness approach and targeted math instruction using the illustrated math curriculum. So collaborative teams will foster critical thinking through student voice with district support.
And this is the framework that we propose that the district uses. It's the framework that we use that really lifts the opportunity for us to be working in collaboration and coherence to ensure that instructional core is met and in alignment with district-wide strategy, highlighting school elements and district elements that match and mirror one another, and recognize factors that a school may have and a community may have that may not be met as a problem or a concern, because there hasn't been the opportunity to collaborate around those things. So this is the research-based support that will guide our work. Here's the data. So you might be thinking, why is this happening? What schools? Why did you come up with this idea? There were some discoveries based on some of the people that we did with priority 2. As you all know, priority 2 is more along the lines of let me just kind of say it in a way that folks understand. Behaviors, right? And infractions and things that happen with students that require support. Student support is where priority 2 goals live. Priority 3 is centered around math impact and improvement that students make in math. And so synthesizing both of those priorities within the process of the information that we learned this year is the following. Priority 3, only 36% of Black students met math growth targets. However, if we correlate this with priority 2, some of those students make up 45.8% of the suspension. 19 of those students are Black with IEPs. The district itself has reduced suspensions to 0.3% since last year. This is the percentage of 0.3%. Very small number. Very small. And as a result of it being so small, because we reduced suspension so much, we really wanted to highlight what is the demographic, what is the group that still continues to struggle. Right, very similar to the L project that I'm going to present next. We want it to be focused and targeted and actionable. And so this proposes an actionable approach to address the needs of Black students with IEP, but also synthesizing priority 2 and 3 so we can identify those schools and those individual students. Next. So here's a little bit of that. And then you put the numbers in there, obviously, because I can't, right? So school number 1, the previous slide, you guys already had in the DCC. So you'll know that, that's public knowledge. But here, I can't share that information because it's you know, confidential, there we go. So school 1, school 2, school 3. This is just to give you a visual. School 1, you have 2 suspensions and then superintendent suspension, right? But there's a total of 6. These 2 here are the same student. And this student happens to be struggling here. Right? Beginning of the year, middle of the year, academically, there's a decline in math. In comparison to students that do not have an IEP, but Black. It's not about the demographic of the color of their skin, obviously. It is about the special education needs the students have. And so what we're proposing is something very precise. We'll know exactly who these students are, right? Because it's so small, right? And you can be personable. You can get to know the students. You can support the schools. You can support the families, right? The following slides will determine more about that. But school number 2 is another example. Here are 5 suspensions. Here are students that do not have IEP but are Black. Here are students that are Black with IEPs. If you can make the comparison with the bars, you can see that there's a decline, right? Or a need for students with IEPs because they're not making the same progress, right? That's next slide. I'm trying to get through this slide. So here is where we are going to propose a pilot. We are recommending a team-based approach. A team, right? It is something that is possible. It's not an easy proposal, but it's possible. All schools have guidance counselors. Most have social workers. They have a special education team, general education teacher, special education teacher, families, right? Parent coordinator, other folks that community-based, folks that we work with in partnership that can support and create structures. Every school structure may look a little different, but you can create a team that can work cohesively along with the teachers to support the student, the individual student, and address the root cause of the underperformance. It also provides a systemic approach and alignment to academic and behavioral needs, closing the opportunity for students to decline in their academics.
So just to jump in really quickly here, this is where we've been doing some work in the past 3 years now around the MTSS process, the multi-tiered approach to supporting students. That includes what Big is pointing to on the opposite end on the 4 categories over there. So what the idea is, as a district, we've always been a high-performing district. So when we look at ourselves compared to the other 32 community school districts, we rank in the top 5. And so everyone thinks that's great, and every year we're so excited about how high the quality of education is in District 15. But when you start going deeper into the data and really start thinking about the data the way Principal Figueroa has been sharing with you, you're starting to see the gaps that we're facing. And we have historically, to some extent, ignored those gaps because we perform so well, and we only focus on what we do well, and we have a hard time on focusing where we're not doing well. So we're trying to present this information to show you, we know where we're not doing well now, and here's our plan to try to address those gaps. Because while we're great and high performing, it's not enough when the most marginalized children in this district consistently get left behind, even though we're such a well-off district, because we only focus on what we're doing well. And it's not so serious that we're not doing well because other districts might be struggling more, for example. And so we compare ourselves to other districts in a comparative mode of 1 to 32, when we really should be comparing ourselves to our own selves and who we're supporting. And so Big's plan to address these gaps, you've been hearing how she's done it in her school, how she's been analyzing the data and looking at it from a different perspective of other schools. And then on the next slide, Big, you want to talk about the plan and what we plan to do?
Yep, so advancing equity and closing gaps. The data that we talked about, we've gone far back from 22 to 25. We looked at a few years of DCEP data, right? So it's not just 1 year, we can't make changes in just 1 year. But what we're proposing based on this data, we're looking at students that are Black with IEP facing high suspension rates and low math proficiency. Again, very low for our district. Remember, we only have 0.3% suspension. And out of that percentage, we have a fraction of students that happen to be Black students with IEPs, right? The number is very small, but very actionable. Despite some growth, many pilot schools show stale progress due to inconsistent instruction and weak behavioral supports. Long term, what we want to do is we want to propose an equity-driven approach, similar to what we've been doing in our school, which was every school will look differently. We will collaborate to ensure that we meet the community's needs and the school needs in the context of the work that we do. Year 1, we're going to launch the wellness teams at every school and focus specifically on math warm-ups. We're using IM curriculum, and we're going to make sure we're using math warm-up. We're checking in specifically with those students before we launch the rest of the lesson. If students are not engaged and do not demonstrate that they can fulfill the grade level of material throughout the duration of that lesson, then supports will be put in place to use a small group, right, reciprocal approach potentially to teaching those students before we continue with the day's lesson. That's what a class would look like, right? In terms of the behavioral supports, we are going to make sure that the team, the wellness team, supports the instructional team when writing IEPs, specifically around the students that are struggling in this demographic.
Let me be clear, this is not for all schools. We're selecting a few schools to go through this process.
The 3 that we showed in that.
Correct. And specific because, as we shared, it's specific to what the data trends are. And that's why we're focusing on those 3 schools for that project. Moving forward, or fast forwarding, the next project that we're working on.
So year 2, we're going to expand this work. We're going to expand it to all middle schools and focus on reading as well and small class sizes. So by next year, we'll have a year of small class size. By next year, we'll know in middle school exactly what the reading curriculum shift may be, right? And then we're going to lean into reading. First year is math. And then the 3rd year, we're going to scale this and customize it across grade levels, right? To include more supports for families and students. We're also proposing to the district superintendent the participatory action research approach to really do some community engagement in Red Hook to begin asking the community exactly what is their need. what exactly does the community need to be successful, right? And when we say successful, we mean families, right? If children are not able to come to school on time, what do you need? Is there some sort of wraparound service? Is there some mental health support that's needed in the community? Just so that, we don't have that in Red Hook, but we also don't have that in the Gowanus area either. And the 3 schools that have been identified are schools that do recruit students. They have students in the community, right, that need these supports, right? We know that if we're not meeting a basic need outside of the community, it's really hard, no matter what we do inside of schools, to support families and students. So that's pretty much what we're proposing.
So the 3 schools is a multi-tiered approach, but also engaging the stakeholders in the process of understanding the needs outside of school that might impact school, if that makes sense. So we're focusing on those 3 schools, we're gonna expand to more middle schools, and then hopefully that's gonna become a district-wide thing that's over time, so that it's not a separate thing or an isolated thing, but something that's embedded in the everyday practice. And if Deputy Lancelot wanted to say, share something.
I wanted to share, just to back up for 1 second, that the reason why Principal Figueroa took on this project to begin with was that she joined a leadership program through Bank Street and the Department of Education, an aspiring superintendent program. And so when she came to Superintendent Alvarez, she proposed some ideas in terms of projects, and the superintendent challenged her to look at the data and to think about some of our most marginalized groups and some of the gaps that she would work to close as taking on a district project. And she designed this idea and has been working in collaboration with her colleagues. And we believe, right, principals leading principals, just like teachers leading teachers, students leading students, can really make an impact in moving the work and shifting mindsets and, helping to build systems and building cultures around learning and collaborating. And so she's been in the field with her colleagues, not only talking about the work, but modeling the work and helping them build the culture and the systems around it. So we're so excited and proud of what she's been able to accomplish in such a short period of time. And this for us is a model of how we want to develop our leaders moving forward as sort of a mini inquiry project of lots more to come of how we want to see our principals lead in the district, especially when they have success stories like you've seen, in Red Hook, at her specific school, where she has been able to close the gap and build this beautiful school, and develop this community to rally around. Students are doing well, and she's closing the gap, and she got off the CSI list, and all of these amazing, successes, and we want to spread that in some of the schools that are struggling in some of those areas.
So if one project isn't enough, and running the school isn't enough in Red Hook, she added a second project that she's been working on, that we worked on developing together in a plan. So if you go to the next
Thank
slide.
you to the wellness team members, because if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't have. Thank you, Nicole, for sharing that backstory, because I didn't.
So I originally shared with you all special ed and ENL, right? So we talked a little bit about special ed, particularly our Black boys who have IEPs. Now we're getting into the largest group of Ls in Brooklyn North, which reside in District 15. We have the largest out of the 7 districts within Brooklyn North, districts 13, 14, 15, I have to get my 16, 19, 23, and 32. All the Brooklyn North community school districts. We have the largest number of Ls, L population. So we're struggling with Ls, or we thought we were struggling a lot with Ls. We're actually not struggling as much as we thought we were when we went deeper into the data, which I presented last month. But last month I shared with you that I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the work that FIG has been doing, particularly with 3 middle schools and 3 elementary schools, that we're seeing a pattern and trend as it relates to transitioning students who are also Ls, and at the same time, concerns with whether or not they have IEPs, as well as transition. And so, FIG?
Yeah, thanks, Superintendent, for just giving an overview there. So school year 24-25, we did some inquiry work, right? We started looking at the number of students that we have in District 15 and the rise of L students that are remaining in transitioning and expanding for years and years. So to your point earlier, when you say that the state is saying we are spending tons of money on certain services and certain schools and certain communities, certain states are falling short because they can't sustain such a thing that doesn't have impacts, right? This is the reason why I ventured into this pilot. We are having that same, or we were having that same issue here at District 15.
Just one second.
Students were,
For context, I'm sorry. Transitioning students, you would know them as intermediate students when it comes to language acquisition. And your expanding students would be your advanced students. So usually advanced students are struggling with writing or some forms of reading. And usually your transitioning students, depending on where they are in transitioning, could be struggling with either writing, reading, and a little bit of listening. So those are the language acquisition modalities. And so that's where they're struggling with. But transitioning and expanding are your intermediate and advanced students. So these are the students that, with all intents and purposes, these are the kids you see in struggling schools, where the kids seem to be struggling simultaneously with language acquisition. But when it comes to an L student compared to a non-L student, the expectation of an L student is that they're perfecting English, where some of our non-L students still haven't perfected English themselves. So the bar is even higher for those L students to perform well on a niceness lat assessment because they're expected to have perfection or near perfection with their English language, if that makes sense. So if you are in a lower grade, expectations for transitioning expanding students are slightly lower than if you're in a 5th grade with language acquisition. I'll give you an example. In a writing portion, a kid might have to write the letter or a word like dog or cat, right? Phonetically sound it, you hear it, write it. That's considered the writing portion. By 5th grade, they have to write a standard essay with the least amount of grammatical errors, with syntax, with all the aspects of what writing is expected in 5th grade. So compare an expanding student in kindergarten compared to an expanding student in 5th grade. It's a huge variation. That's why they took on this project, because transitioning and expanding kids, for all intents and purposes, they're like the same students that are non-Ls in our school. But that's not the issue. They're still not acquiring what the state considers as perfecting the English language. So just want to give that context for those of you that weren't aware.
so it's entering, emerging, transitioning, expanding, right? So when students come in, they take, there's a screen, right? We screen students and we figure out where they belong. Once that happens, students then get the supports needed, right? To Alvarez's point, if students are in middle school, let's just say, and they've been living in transitioning for a long period of time, years and years, and not proficiently expanding their knowledge as it relates to the nicest lat, which students are taking currently, then they are not going to move from one level to the next. Right, resulting in the same services over and over again, pretty much, right? And resources that are depleted without impact. So we want to really make sure that if we are providing services for students, they're impactful. If they're not impactful, then we need to change something, right? And this is an indication of something we need to change. And so what we're doing here is really trying to figure out a more granular approach to language work for our Ls, so that we can show growth as measured on the nicest side. So let's do what I just explained. How can we be more systemically, use a more systemic approach to ensure that L shows significant English language progress on the nicest side? So ELP is what we measure to see if students are moving from one area and one bucket to the next. And if we know when we do nicest side, it's speaking, listening, and writing. Students are learning speaking and listening skills first. When they first come into the New York City public school, we are supposed to be exposing them to language and listening, right? So trips, having conversations, projects, discussions, right? All of that rich language then allows students to process, build prior knowledge, and then eventually speak, right? And then once they're speaking and they're using academic vocabulary, they are then expected to transition or transfer, I should say, transfer that knowledge onto a product work. Right? It's measured on the nicest slide. The nicest exam is very different from a state exam. But to Raphael's point, it does measure progress enough to determine whether or not a student is going to transition out of those services. Now, the practices we utilize have to be prioritized in order to show that students are mastering grade level growth. Here are the 6 schools that we identified. We have about 20,950 students in the district, about 3,200 and change of those students are L students. And about 1,100 of those students are students that are expanding and transitioning, some of which are also IEP students. And so this is how we identify the 6 schools.
Next slide.
Here's what we did. So we began to analyze the 9 and 5 and determine, as I mentioned, who are the students. From there, we identified the schools. There was a lot of work here, right? I found myself in schools all the time, over and over, getting to know the kids, talking to the students, speaking to the team, talking to the principal, and figuring out how we can come to a common ground for each identified school to see what it is that those students need. Then we just establish the baseline. We have to do an assessment, right? So we don't have the data that we need because when you score this analysis flat, we can't look at it. We can't share that information. We can't look at the samples of student assessment. So we had to do a simpler baseline to really determine what the next steps were. We unpacked some of the content and some of the explicit strategies and the curriculum supports to figure out whether or not those linguistic demands were met. And then we collaborated with the school to monitor growth as it related to that sampler and the other data that we were to determine next steps.
Thank you, Lynn.
Now, root cause number 1. Teachers of L's have disconnected how and why. That's what we discovered. So we had to support those schools and those teachers and those teams. And the principals were all willing to do the work, and so were the teams. Okay, there we go. Root cause number 2, insufficient data points. Right, so that's when we decided that the sample was really necessary and we needed more data to really dig in deeper and determine what the next steps were going to be. Number 3, surface level understanding of content. So L work is primarily defined as ELA work with vocabulary focus. So that is a root cause, and we have to distinguish the next steps for that to address that.
So for purposes of time, the next slide is going to give that timeline of what she just explained just now. So you can just read that for your own time, but essentially that's the time frame she did, what she just explained just now. Next slide. Just touch on a few of these points. Please.
So here are some critical things. Listening and speaking, as I mentioned before, we have to make sure that we are prioritizing those areas before 3rd grade, because then it becomes harder, right? Demands become harder, grade level material becomes harder, and it becomes harder for students to master the skills needed. We want to make sure that oracy is prioritized as well. Students must be speaking and listening and talking and experiencing, so we have to prioritize that more. Pedagogy needs fast, quick opportunity to ensure that L's oracy skills are being captured in class, right? So we have to make sure that those structures are put in place in those schools, and we worked on that for the 3 schools. And then, of course, vocabulary work is really important because that's how you build foundational knowledge, by making sure that you understand how to use those words in context. And then transitioning that into writing, where you're taking it, speaking and listening, and you're moving it into the actual writing components of the nicest slide. Where does it live? Does it exist? How are teachers supporting that? Is there process monitoring the process? L's need explicit instruction, like Raphael mentioned. Everybody needs explicit instruction. They need to know exactly what they're doing and exactly how to do it. And through this process, we realized that we need to dig a little bit more into this. The 6 schools did do the work to demonstrate that it's possible. And then use more data and student-centered approach. Teachers also need more time to really think about the curriculum and how it supports our students.
Slide.
So here's what we're proposing. Always we look at the rates of fact and we see, did the students move? And I guarantee you they will. Watch it. It's gonna happen. Then we validate, right? More specifically with those 6 piloted schools. We then take a look at that baseline for next year, right? Because that's where we set the foundation of the next work. What are we doing next and how do we know we need to do this and which of the schools and the students that need it the most? Then we focus on the schoolwork. We go back to the groundwork. We go to the schools, we have a conversation with teachers, principals, we have that collaborative framework in place again, and we make sure that we put a plan together for next year. And then we increase accountability. We're making sure that we're supporting from the district level, 3 to 4 week check-ins, side by side with coaching, strategies and explicit instruction for tier 1 grade level, because that's where it should start for us. And then, of course, interventions if necessary.
So essentially foundational skills catered to for all of our students. To address our Ls, you see the work that's gonna happen. And to address students with IEPs, you see the work that we're trying to do to address specifically students with IEPs, who are also Black students. And then scaling that work. But that, I just wanted to give you some preview of what some of our principals are doing, particularly big around this work and the principals she's working with to try to close those gaps. The way we identify the school is strictly from the data. The data tells a story, doesn't always tell the whole story, but that's how we do the deeper work to see if that story is solidified or if we have to make adjustments to the story. And that's why, even though this is a broad approach, each school is more specific depending on where each school is when it comes to the data. So we just want to present that. Turn to the next slide, because we're gonna go really quickly now, so pretty much almost done.
Thank you so much.
If you can stay around. Yeah, they're gonna be next to me because they have questions. We'll definitely have questions for you. Summer updates, right? So applications are closed. Students can be added to the wait list. July 4th, we will be closed. But Summer Rising starts on July 2nd for K to 8, ends August 8th for our middle schools, but goes for Summer Rising to August 15th. We have principals and assistant principals assigned to all of our sites. We're using NSSI. They've already had their first training around that. Schools are already ready to receive our particular students across our district, and I think that we're all set for summer school in District 15. So I'm happy about that we have all the staffing that we need to run summer school. And they've all been coordinating and already been meeting with Paula Stein, who's the lead in my district, as it relates to summer school. So we're excited about that. Turn to the next slide. Upcoming events that we have our recognition ceremony tomorrow night. At Middle School 88, we're recognizing some teachers, assistant principals, and parents across our district. So we're excited about that. The parents, the staff members and parents have received their emails about them being invited for tomorrow. So we look forward to celebrating them and honoring the work that they're doing at their schools. They were selected by their school. And then we have our Learning Together Field Day, which is going to be on June 6th. We have district team members along with the Brooklyn Nets and others that are supporting this particular event and supporting with the work around organizing the event. So we're happy that this work is happening. Again, I have to really shout out our CEC, who has provided a lot of funding for many of the things, whether it be food, whether it be balloons, whether it be whatever is needed for all the events that we've been having throughout the year, whether it's our line performance, just really in partnership and supporting our initiatives district-wide. So we really, honestly, because we don't really get a big budget in the district office because the money goes to the schools, I have to be 1,000% grateful to the CEC for the partnership and ensuring that the needs are met across our district for all these events. And we look forward to seeing everybody. And I always see different CEC members at different events that we have, whether it's project-based learning, whether it's STEM Day. So I want to thank all the CEC members for constantly putting 100% energy into the events that we're doing across our district. And then I want to thank the families who attended our family workshop. This is the Spanish workshop that happened on May 2nd. As you can see, the auditorium. That's a lot of parents from my perspective to come in person. And that's not just the parents that were in person. There were some, I believe this also had virtual as well. It was great to see all the parents here to learn about how to support their children in the summer when it comes to learning loss. Next slide. That first slide was in Spanish, the Chinese, and then the second slide was in Spanish. So you're seeing more families participating, just so you have an idea. And then that's it. So I'll pass it over to CEC.
Great. Thank you so much. We are now at our question and answer period. We'll start with people joining us on Zoom. Is there anybody that has a question and or comment for the superintendent or Principal Figueroa? Yes, Rochelle?
Oh, thank you. Okay, so first of all, this was really wonderful to listen to this really forward-focused, comprehensive review. My name is Dr. Rachel Lieberman. I'm the founder of Story Emotion Social Therapy, which is CEST. It's an interdisciplinary approach between speech pathology and mental health. bridged by the stories that children share in treatment. And I've been listening to all of your talk about your social emotional learning, and I believe that you may find this impactful. Children learn with the CEST approach to tell whole stories about social events that they experience: fight in the classroom, a recess squabble, a lunchroom difficulty, and teachers through CEST learn to create the emotionally safe environments where children want to talk. And when children tell their whole stories, they bridge the story grammar components and the social emotional learning. Now, in order for children to feel comfortable communicating to a teacher, the CEST is based on this me first approach where teachers create the change in their own social emotional development before asking the child. So what ends up happening in a classroom is that many children find the social world overwhelming. They misbehave. The teacher becomes drained by their misbehavior. Sometimes there's parental involvement that is sometimes difficult, directed at the teacher. The principal has to get involved. But with all this cycle, many, many times, there's a missing perspective of the child's story, the child's whole story, the child's communication that was never expressed. And the CEST approach gives the children the tools. It's a dual alignment with the New York State SEL benchmarks and the next generation ELA standards. And I don't know if someone was just talking, or was that a question? No, okay. Okay, so professional development that I provide helps teachers. We do start the year off right for orientation, for end recess squabbles and lunchroom squabbles. And not only is the professional development provided for teachers, but it's also for parents, because parents are part of the picture of being able to create the emotionally safe environments, to communicate with the teacher, to communicate with their children. And I really wanted to present that. I actually was on my way there to an hour before. I had some car difficulties. I said, okay, this is where I'm meant to be. I would love to show you my stuff in person. I can send you my capability statement. I'm an MWBE compliant with the DOE's trainings. So I'd love to answer any questions if you have.
Well, if you want to attend the meeting and drop off some of your materials, we'll be glad to take them. I don't think we're going to have time for those questions. Maybe we could add you to an agenda at a future date. Ms. Lieberman, but thank you so much for sharing your work with us.
You're welcome.
You could probably also send your materials to
I
the
mean,
district.
you could drop, you could
Yeah.
send your materials to the district. Certainly you could drop information in the chat about yourself. I think you came to maybe the last meeting as well and
Yeah.
we spoke to, yeah. So yeah, thank you. Let's move on to the
Thank you.
next comment.
Any other questions or comments for the superintendent or Principal Figueroa from those on Zoom?
Hi, I'm Wanda Lopez Ramirez, principal of PS1. How are you? Good evening. Just a comment, thank you, Figgy. I am one of the schools identified in the group. And I just want to share just very quickly, because I know it's late evening. We at this time have a study group where we've been supporting by the superintendent's office with CJ, and we're very grateful to have that time. The reality is we have procession money in order to pay teachers, right? Because we're talking about a problem of practice, and in order to make our staff understand like what exactly are the needs or the continued needs of our school community, then we need to make them smarter about that, right? And during the day, unfortunately, we don't have the time to do that. So I guess it's a comment of we're fortunate enough right now to have procession money to pay a group of about 12 teachers that are staying on a weekly basis and have been for the last 6 weeks, and then continue because they're obviously good learning regarding the writing and the work that our Ls will be supported based on this study group. And I guess the comment is, it only will work if we have that time together, and the reality is that it's not going to be for free, right? And so I kind of want to just put that out there. And then the last part, of course, Antonia, I didn't hear you mention the PS1 as being one of the schools that definitely would be impacted with the possibility of a charter school coming up. Of course, I just want to be clear, is it going to be where the gas station is? Am I correct?
Yes.
Of course, I'm really concerned, of course, being in Sunset Park with my family, thinking about how is that going to impact when they're to our environment, right? Because it is a gas station, and I'm sure that the materials that are probably underground, in order to make sure that, in order to have that as a gas station now, like in my brain is like, how is that gonna work? But anyway, just a comment. I thank you for this space, and always very supportive of our District 15 and our CEC. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from people joining us on Zoom? Is there anybody on the Bangla line?
No question in Bangla line.
Any questions or comments in the Mandarin line?
No comment and question from the Mandarin line.
Any comments and questions on the Spanish line?
No comments or questions on the Spanish line.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from people here in person?
So
You Ed?
I would just like to offer my respect for the work that you are doing. Thank you. Not just on top of, in addition to the tireless work as a principal, as a former middle school person, I feel you. But it sounds like this work is collaborative for your district, and I feel like you're anchoring seeds that are going to grow across this ginormous district of yours, and that's really exciting. So
Thank you, and that is the intention, right? Both projects are collaborative. Wanda shared her perspective, right, very briefly. But if it wasn't for the support that we get from the actual principals and the structure that they have in the school to support the work and allow it to exist, it wouldn't happen. Right?
And the vulnerability. Right?
And it's the vulnerability, it's the ability and the wants, the urge, the passion, the teams that are willing to come and stay here late to present these things because they feel important, it feels important to them, and they really want to share the work that they've done. Collaboration is the key, right? So collaboration on the school level, on the teacher level, on the district level. And so that's the bottom line, and we can do this together as long as we're all willing to, and we have the, the urgency, right, and the need. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for listening.
CEC questions, Vanessa?
Thank you for this. It's super important. I've recently become more involved in the IT arena, and one of the issues I found was that identifying children with IEPs tends to be something that those parents with more access to economic means and to be able to do more efficiently or navigating the system to get there. So maybe I missed it, but what are we doing to make sure that those categories of less privileged children are able to access the tools at the beginning?
Yeah. So the collaborative approach that we're proposing allows the school level SIT team, which really works on the IPs along with school psychologists and the social worker and the administrator, the teachers, really give an opportunity. This approach gives an opportunity for a wellness team to come in, which is the social worker and the guidance counselor, right? And a community director if the school has one. to really cohesively think about what it is that the individual student might need. Now, in terms of the external support, that's the participatory action research approach that we are proposing. That is a challenge. And typically, the challenges come from, right, having or living in a community of need, right? And so the proposal that we are attempting, the work that we're attempting to do to address that need is really digging into the root cause. In order for us to figure out the root cause, there has to be a ground and indigenous sort of approach. So we have to engage with the community itself. And we're starting to engage with the community itself outside of the school in Red Hook to see, are there resources in the community for those families that need that support, such as mental health support, additional food, because it may just be a, shortage at home with food, and we can expand pantries, right, outside of Red Hook, because we have a pantry in Red Hook. If there is any support in terms of mental health support as well, so that there's an understanding that if these families have a community need, we have to advocate for that need.
And to address from a district level, what's happens now is we do provide, whenever a parent is concerned about the IEP process in our district, we do provide parents with advocates that are actual free advocates to help them through the actual navigating the entire IEP process. I just remember emailing somebody on Friday with this. There was a parent who has a concern about IEP. She's not aware, not sure, she's not comfortable. We connected her easily with an advocate that could provide her the knowledge that she needs in her native language to support in that work. So we offer our families that access. What we've also been doing is some family workshops at the district level to support parents through the actual IEP process and understanding what the IEP process entails. We've also been connecting with our schools to connect them with parent coordinators who are connecting them with other access points to provide support around the IEP process, especially in our most marginalized population.
Yeah.
If I can add to that, are we having as a district, the professional capacity to make the correct diagnosis in the schools themselves? Because one limitation I found is that some students are not able to get the correct diagnosis because the person who is assessed is not a psychologist, clinician, or some sort of specific.
So in every one of our schools, the school psychologist is the clinician at the schools. If they're a school psychologist, by nature, they are clinicians. They can actually do that work. Whether you feel that the quality of the clinician is up to par, that's a whole different story. That has to do with the supervising school psychologist who also supervises. If there are concerns for parents around some of the things that are being questioned as it relates to student services, then a supervising school psychologist could provide support with further answering those types of questions, because that's the reason why they supervise the school psychologist. So it's interesting, while the principal also rates the school psychologist, there's a supervising psychologist to provide those additional supports when necessary. We are only allowed at the state of New York to identify by 13 classifications. For anyone who's out there who knows, there are more than 13 classifications for disabilities. These are the ones that are connected to, for the most part, the impact on the educational processes that students may or may not go through. Now, a student might need services, for example, related services only for speech. But if the speech isn't impeding on a student's ability to still learn, they might stutter, for example, but they can still learn even with the stuttering. It's not necessarily a requirement to provide them with an IEP for that, if that makes sense. And so those are the challenges that go back and forth. In some cases, a neuropsychological might be necessary for parents thinks that there's something beyond a certain extreme. Those are things that have to be done, and those are on a case-to-case particular basis. In some cases, in this particular district, going to your point about families who may have the means, sometimes we get families who want services for a child that really doesn't qualify for the services according to the measures that we have to use to qualify for the particular services. And they're adamant about that. There is a process for that. When a parent does not agree with the diagnosis well, not the diagnosis because they're not doctors, but they are clinicians to be able to figure out which disability within the 13 categories that exist to be able to place. If parents disagree, there is a process called impartial hearing. They bring their evidence, the Department of Ed brings their evidence, and an arbitrator who's familiar with these cases makes an informed decision about what would be best and what can go forward. In some cases, school districts have lost. In some cases, school districts have won. And so it's about making sure you have your documentation to prove what you're proving, because we can't just go based on what you just say. It has to be from doctor to doctor to be able to explain these particular things. We've also seen some cases especially in this district, where when you go to the same doctor, everybody's diagnosed with the same thing. So it's the doctor who's providing documentation to be able to keep their services in the community, and because they get these letters from this doctor, the doctor continues to give the letters. In cases like that, I have personally reported to the state health board, to do an evaluation of those medical clinicians, because they're not doing a service to their community or to the profession as it relates to providing services to a student. Listen, if a student's way behind grade level, that does not mean that they have a disability. That means they're behind grade level, and there could be many reasons for that. Some of it could be trauma. Some of it could be they didn't get the correct foundational skills. Some of it could be a lot of other things, absences, all right? There's a lot of contributing factors that impact a student's ability to learn, or to learn at a grade level point, right? And so that's why all these things have to be taken into consideration when making decisions or informed decisions around children. I, for one, have been looking at this district because we have an astronomical amount of students in special ed and in special ed services in this district. And a lot of it has to do with what you have shared when I'm looking deeper into access. And who knows how to get their doctor to write what they want so that a student can get, for example, a behavior para, when they may not need the behavior para. Or
Sets plus
ICT. So an ICT setting is restrictive setting. So it's gen ed, related services, sets, ICT. There are some children who have ICT and sets. That's bonkers to me. That's more restrictive than having sets. I mean, ICT, right? The next category would be 12-1. So like, it's sometimes what people want because they've read or done research about what they think is going to be best to support their child, but not necessarily going to be helpful, right? And so we're looking at that a little deeper. It happens to be, I have a special ed background, so I've been looking into some of these things a little deeper. Or families in our district, and we have a large number across our district, of non-public school. To me, for the most part, it's ridiculous. Because this is the largest system in the world. We have most, if not all, services to be able to provide to students. And we have the access and means to do so. Somehow, some of our families still get these non-public school things. And sometimes that's what they're looking for. And that's a concern for me as a superintendent of a district like this. And so I am looking into those things around whether or not access is being provided first, because we gotta make sure access is provided before we say no to something, but then identifying, is this the accurate service to provide to students? And so that's some deeper work that we're doing that I haven't even mentioned as part of the DCEP process and things that I'm also looking into. But I'm starting to uncover those things as it relates to some of the data you saw Big being able to present, right? Some of this has to do with, it has nothing to do with the student's ability to learn. Some of it just has to do with the circumstances this child is coming with, and it's not my fault, teacher, then it has to be someone's fault, and the only way to blame is to say that the child may or may not have a disability. And in particularly brown and Black communities, it happens more often than not. A behavioral issue because I wrestle in kindergarten because I'm a rambunctious boy turns into you're a violent, aggressive child, and now you need a behavior para, and you're also disabled. It's nonsense. It's
dyslexia piece.
Yeah, it's, I'm a rambunctious boy in my community. This is how we roughhouse and we play. And you may not understand it because in your community or in your culture, you don't do it, but in mine, I do. And it doesn't mean that I'm behind or delayed. It can mean a lot of things. On the contrary to that, it could mean that that's what it is. What I'm saying or offering is that we just try to look deeper into what students are going through and regardless of their needs or not. And that's what I'm trying to get at. over time, is that we need to
Yeah.
really say.
I mean, with respect, I think that I hear what you're
Yeah.
saying, but like, I've seen so many cases of what Vanessa is talking about where families know that their kid needs help
Yeah.
and navigating the IEP process, if they don't like, my kid has an IEP. I have a PhD in an education-related field, so I know how to navigate this
Yeah.
system. It shouldn't be like that.
Yeah, I
And-
agree.
And for
100% agree.
some parents, it's really traumatic to encounter the system in that way.
Yeah.
Can I just say?
And we also have educators that are struggling with it as well. So we have several educators in our district who have children in our schools who are struggling with this navigation that
Yeah.
you're even talking about. And
It's
they're
really
educators
hard.
in the system
Mhm.
who know the system, right? So, yeah.
What we're proposing addresses what you just mentioned about
Yes.
educators still learning how to navigate an IEP.
Right.
And learning what SCI is.
Yeah.
And parents learning how to navigate an IEP and
Yeah.
advocating for their children.
Mhm.
And students knowing that they have an IEP and what is it that they need the IEP
We're
for.
really trying to address
Well,
getting entry
so this
points.
begins the entry
Priority.
point through math.
Right.
And to your point, there is a psychological part to an evaluation
Right.
that begins at the school level. And then there's potentially a psychiatric component
Right.
that then requires clinicians outside of the school to collaborate with internal school staff. And so there lies another portion of what still needs to be distilled and understood when it comes to an individual education plan. We can't do everything in 1 year.
Yeah.
But we can say, we can identify a small portion that is demonstrating the most need and align it to a specific academic piece and begin with this wellness approach from there.
And Katina, I do want to acknowledge, you're right.
Yeah.
Not only is it difficult to navigate, because it really is difficult to navigate, but also even in navigating it, what are we using and why are we using it? It's hard to even navigate which assessments are being used. The
Right.
deputy and myself were talking about this today, about how do we bring in more assessment around, for example, dyslexia earlier on? And even if we're missing it in K through 2, or even if we're missing it, right, but even if we're missing it before the second grade, or like missing aspects of where the kid might go towards the second grade, how do we then find a way to offer it in middle school? So that we're catching even the students that were missed between 2nd to 5th grade in our middle school. And so that's some ideas that we've been planning around. It's funny, we were talking about this today, and we're planning around doing something in Sunset Park as it relates to this work. Going forward, I just don't want to share the details yet, because if it doesn't happen, I'm gonna be upset with right? I'm gonna be upset that it doesn't happen, but I'm working towards trying to address also the further gaps that we have around dyslexia, particularly for middle school. So yeah.
You did have, so on Vanessa's point and Katina's, I know the district did some training.
Yes.
Over the past few months, that you offer, I think there's 2 or 3 different trainings
Yes.
at different times on how to navigate the IEP process to address kind of what Vanessa
Yeah.
brought up. I'm just curious, how did it go? What was the attendance like? And what are the plans to maybe expand that moving forward to better support?
Yeah, that's definitely a good point. I think that doing it at the district level has been positive, and we've had a lot of turnout for that. I think we have to find ways to get it at the local level, where the school levels are doing the trainings that we're doing at the district level. Because that provides access to families in the community that they go to, which they often are part of and are part of being serving, so to speak. And so now, having done this for the 3rd year of expanding the IEP process and getting a lot of people participating in it, we're working towards getting our schools to be doing the same type of professional learning around how we did it at the school level. Sometimes my concern with that is the back and forth between a school and that process, right? And that's why we did it at the district level. So I'd like to expand it to the school level, but still maintain the district level as the next step of the process, and trying to create something that's systemic so that everyone's hearing the same message across all of our schools for coherence purposes, so that we're not hearing one message at PS 10 and then hearing a different message at PS 230. It needs to be the same message for coherence purposes, so that people understand and trust that there is a process, and that we're helping them try to figure out how to navigate that process. So to your point, yes, but we would have to create something systemic. I'm in the process of still waiting for my new AZ, my administrator special ed, to finally arrive. They've been hired. It's just an arduous process with the mayor's, the city hall, that it has to go through. But we are seeming to be finalized. We're just in the process of waiting for the offer letter. As soon as she comes on board, that's gonna be one of the tasks that she's asked to do, is not only to maintain the district-wide ones, but how do we create a coherence for each school to present? So like, we give you the presentation, you add things that connect to your school, but the presentation is consistent across the district.
That makes sense.
Hopefully that helps.
Can I read some comments in the chat? Is that, and then we'll go to Kwame next?
Sure.
I thought you read my words. So just making a point that an IEP based on a medical diagnosis depends on testing that is
Yes.
rarely covered by even robust health insurance, can cost
Yes.
upwards of $7,000. Which is something I think
Yep.
to consider.
Yes.
And that this can be navigated around with a learning disability based IEP, but many parents won't have the access to advocates without lots of support. And so just something to consider. And then also going off of some of the other things you were talking about in terms of the boys specifically,
Yeah.
is in terms of the girls, and sometimes girls can face an uphill battle with the credibility of the need to get
Absolutely.
them because they're able, there's some masking that can
Yeah.
happen.
Yes.
So. just
Jonathan,
wanted
thank you
to-
for reading those,
Yeah.
because it's also making me think, to Vanessa's earlier point and now to the point that was brought into the chat. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna have Brenda share with our CEC the actual list of the advocates. So perhaps that's also posted on the CEC's website. And then, Nicole, if we can make sure that under the, parents, rights, the parents, link in our district's website, that the actual list for the advocates is listed on there, so that parents can just click on it and just have a little bit of easier access at the very least.
And we have the languages they speak as well? Or-
Yes, I don't know if we have the language, because each agency is different. You would be able to call the different agencies and ask. But they're state approved advocates, and they're also free. Nicole, also have Michelle share that with the PCs, so that that's also going home in a message, and I want her to verify that it's actually gone out for each of our schools.
Yeah, send it to me and I'll put it on the website.
So now we have three avenues. CEC's website, District 15's website, and PCs will be sending that out this week. So that the community has access to the advocates that exist across, the state of New York.
Great, thanks. Kwame?
Getting stuff done at the moment we're here.
That was a lot to unpack. Give me a moment just to collect my own thoughts. So much information. I walked in, I got 50% of the presentation, and that was a lot in itself. A lot in a good way. Principal Fig, thank you for your work. Superintendent Alvarez, thank you for leading the work and getting it to us. It's funny, and I'm because we just had a PTA meeting last week, and this kind of encapsulates what we were speaking about from the SLT at PS15. And I'm like a little giddy about this. I know there's some opinions that's yay and nay, because it seems like a project that's just coming up off the ground. But I feel like this is educational church for me. And not to get biblical religious, no pun intended, but I'm excited because as a parent of a child with an IEP, and I started off ignorant to the process. When my son was in EI, I had no idea until he went into so many acronyms, CPSE, from the CSE system, and that's when I became an advocate and became educated through communities like this as to how to navigate through the system. And to get to the point, I'm really inspired as a parent and as a new person involving myself in these committees, in this community, because I see an action plan. Like, this is how we're gonna do it. You know what I mean? And it's not just talking and this is the data and we need to do this or complaining. This is our community that's having an issue. And I remember when I was coming up, there was no child left behind. And I feel like I was left behind, to be honest. and many others were. And I love that we're picking up those people who might be on the ground, so to speak, and raising them up as a community. And that just, it tears me up, to be honest. Like, I don't mean to get corny with it, but I get emotional when I see empathy and compassion from professionals. Because a lot of people, it's just their job, it is, what else can I do? But we're looking at what's the problem, and I say we as a district, and how can we improve this? And we're not gonna do it right now, so you're not selling me wolf tickets. But this is the plan for the future and right now, and I believe in it. It sounds sound, it's a great plan, and I just appreciate it.
Thank you, Great. Antonia?
Yeah. I really commend your work. Did you ever imagine that when you were running around NFAD with a walkie-talkie, that you were doing the principal's PV project?
No. No, I didn't even think I was gonna end up at 676. I don't even know how I ended up over there, but I was there.
Yeah.
And I love the place.
Yeah.
I'm born and raised in District 15, you know that, right? So this is my district, right? This is who I am.
Yeah.
And so I'll do whatever it takes to make sure that we support the needs of the community, kids, and families, and again, we'll do it with y'all.
Yeah. Is the portion of this going to cost?
So we don't know that yet. So we started engaging Maddie. I don't know if you guys know Maddie,
Yeah.
but Maddie was one of the parents that works for the college and does this hard work. And she's really vested in it, very passionate about it. And so actually, Alvarez, after this presentation, I'm going to say, we're gonna reach out to you to have a meeting about the part work, because I've already engaged Julie and she's down.
Okay.
And loves the idea and wants to do the work in the community, because we know that if we're not meeting the basic needs, it's Maslow's theory, right? If basic needs are not met, then this work is going to be really hard to accomplish and sustain. So that external work is really important, and we need to pursue that. And so behind the scenes, I started talking to Maddie, asking her if she was interested in doing this work. Of course, she said yes. She has some ideas of how we can start funding it, and we would like to propose it to you.
Okay.
And so that's the real next step. And hopefully we can get some information from the community, really dig into, you know, what the root cause is. Most of this we already know. Hence the NYU clinic that we're still waiting on the state to approve, but you're gonna have some of that. And then a couple of other things that we want to share with you, but we have a next step for that work as well. And I'm excited to present it.
Great.
Next week for now.
Can we fund projects like that?
District wide. It's not
It's
necessarily
more of an issue of like, we can't vote on someone to change our budget, like,
No.
we're past.
I'm
like,
more thinking for next
next
year. I'm thinking for the next CEC.
CEC could potentially, but they always have to keep like $10,000 in that budget or more for reimbursement. So if like the entire CEC says, we don't need to be reimbursed for childcare and whatever, sure. But I don't know that rules wise, yeah,
Rules
I
wise, you
think
can, because you can
so.
allocate funding as long as it follows. the
Although
guidelines.
we have to, like, there's some technicalities around how Shanice could, like, she can't just write a check.
Yeah.
Like, it would have to be a.
Yeah, I don't know.
What happens
I-
with, I've done this before, so what happens is money gets transferred to the Budget Galaxy or DOE Galaxy as a donation from the CEC, but it would be tied to whatever it's earmarked for.
Okay.
So like if it's something that has to do with professional development and a purchase order is created for that professional development, it can be created for the purposes of that professional development. But notice I use the category of professional development, consultant, educational consultant, in those particular lines, which are categories that can be used as it relates to parents in the district.
Right.
This is about parents.
It would
in the
have to
district.
have 3 bids.
Correct. Yes,
It
that's
would
the,
have to
yeah,
go out
that's always easy to do for 3
Yeah.
bids,
All
but
right.
there are cases where you don't need 3 bids because it's a sole vendor, for example. It's the only person who can do this work.
It would be
Right,
worth
so
it to figure
there are
out.
many different ways to do that. We know how to do that, so we can work with you in navigating that
Yeah.
out. And then we'll work with FACE to figure out what the navigation is of the process. But it does obviously have to be voted on by,
Yeah.
obviously the next CEC and so on and so forth. So yeah.
Good question.
Katina?
I think I used my question time already, but I just wanted to say thank you also. And again, as a parent of a kid with an IEP, seeing the combination of IEP and social emotional learning based teams just makes so much sense. And the more the district can do to support it, I think the better. Thank you.
Thank you.
I second, third, fourth, fifth, and all of that. I'm also a parent of a student with an IEP and have had to navigate that and also know that I'm someone with the resources and it's still very hard.
Yeah.
I just had one small question. And I love our participatory action research. I think it's phenomenal. But I know that there's also a why that you can add on to that in terms of youth participatory action research. And what I was curious about is I wonder if engaging in this work and partnering with the youth at Harbor and within the Red Hook community could add an extra layer to the research and work that you're doing, so it's not just all the adults in the community that
That's
are
part of
engaging
what we're
in?
gonna propose.
Okay,
So it's already in the works.
okay,
First, we were engaging the parents in the community and then adding the youth to it.
okay,
Only because when you do part, you really canvas constituents. You're asking questions, you're getting the information you need to really determine what the issue is.
right, exactly.
In the context of doing that work, we're gonna survey everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody that is engaged in some way, shape or form, to get that information first.
And obviously, there's
And
different
then
ones,
from
different
there-
needs, right? So
Right.
if you ask parents, what do you need in the community, they're gonna tell you. If you ask kids what they need in the community, it might sound different, right? So figuring out how we match those, but certainly students is something that we definitely need to touch into because it's part of our DCP around student voice, choice and agency, which we're trying to develop across from elementary all the way up to high school. So, yeah.
So when we actually figure out what the research question is, that's gonna be designed along with the, the constituents of the table, which include the youth.
Okay, great. Thank you. Nancy?
Well, firstly, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for being here tonight. This was really informative. And I also, I have 3 kids. I have one with also an IEP. And I would agree that it is a daunting, like I have a college degree and like I could not get my kid any support all through elementary school. Like I kept saying there's just something wrong, there's something wrong. And it wasn't until middle school and then COVID hit. But so I really appreciate that we're discussing this and you always have such a great mind as well for like gathering data and, I really appreciate your thoroughness. Our Black boys are so at risk and the prisons are just waiting for them. So they are super important to make sure that we are supporting them. I appreciate that. I look at, I provide support to families who are going through the process. So this sort of happened, lots of phone calls. And I think that, when you look at things like sensitivities, every child is different and some kids are just more sensitive than other kids. It's not always, learning, it's not always, there can also be just, biodynamics. And so, I would appreciate that being a part of this discussion. Impulsivity, those sorts of things often come from these sensitivities. There's all different kinds of therapies and modalities, and I hope that all types are being looked at because I certainly have spent a lot of money on it, and I will say that, they're not all the same and they approach each are differently effective. And something like dialectical behavior training, which I am I think for impulsivity and sensitivities is like just so spot on. Well-established modality that I would just urge you to look at it and see if there's a fit here somewhere in helping, especially this population. And I had a question about summer rising. Is there a way to make sure that students who are in fact in these classrooms are getting spots? Because I know that the spots you run out of seats. There aren't enough seats for the families who want them.
So what's
Do you
happening?
cardiology?
Yeah. So I can tell you around the city what the numbers are. We were expecting 110,000 seats. Right now, we've only filled about 90,000 of those 110,000 seats. So there's 20,000 seats across the city. What they also have done is, they have provided for 20% above what a school can get. So if, let's say you were supposed to have 200 students and they added 20% to that, so they offered 240 seats to that particular site, let's just say, right? What I know is that in our district, our seats are being filled. The only site that I've had an issue with is PS 94, because they have consistently offered the 20% extra, and the parents are sticking to the 20% extra because they want to go there. So we've been having a little bit of issue there, so we're working with the DOE for that. We're not gonna take those kids away that have already been given an offer to those particular sites. It's just a matter of how do we place them. But then we also know that there are some sites that the kids accept the positions early on because this is early. And then in June, at the end of June, they move. They're out of state. They decide to go on vacation. So we end up having an attrition rate, and then we are able to offer then again. So I'm confident in this district at least, I can't speak for every district, but I know in this district, I'm confident that every child who has needed or wanted a summer residency has received one.
I just wanted to comment on something that you mentioned, which is families getting, vouchers to send their kids to private school.
Yeah.
Because their special needs are not being met. I have my own personal opinion based on my personal
Yeah.
experience on that, because I did do that,
Uh-huh.
for a little bit.
And it's a lot. The
And
processes are-
it's incredible, you
Yeah.
have to have a ton of money to front whatever, but I'll just say that our public school systems have everything that is needed. And one thing that I have learned about the private, and I will never tell a parent what to do with their kid, it is their personal, but from my perspective, what I have experienced is that these schools are not held to the same standards in terms of dealing with disabled children. And the qualifications of a lot of the people who work at these schools are like, they were executive directors of nonprofits, and they're deans working with kids who may have kids, like, there's a lot out there that is just unregulated in the private schools, that kids who have special needs, you know, I feel like our public school systems, the capacity is so there.
And I think that's, thank you for that
We have
answer,
to
because I
make
think
sure-
that's what's also missing, is the knowledge of what can happen in a charter school? What can happen in a parochial school? What can happen in a non-secular school? The fact that they're private, they're run differently. I know for a fact that, for example, in the parochial schools, they only have to have a bachelor's degree, and it doesn't have to be in education.
I've seen it firsthand.
It doesn't have to be in education. So, I mean, in the charter schools, there's a certain percentage of teachers that don't need to be qualified to be teachers.
Right.
And the qualifications are different. So that teacher could be a special ed teacher, but not necessarily have a special ed license, for a few years, right? And so there's a lot of things that people need to be more aware of as it relates to their children, especially when it comes to special needs, because there's a lot of information that's not provided to families that they should have
Yeah,
access.
well, I would absolutely agree with that, but then I would urge us to be able to allow families to find those schools that they feel will best in the public school system, that will best meet their needs, and to be able to matriculate them
I agree.
to those schools.
I agree with you. Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Really, I love the work you're doing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. You you're up.
What time do you have the building until?
10.
Yeah.
Okay, cause I'm like, do you have forums? Do you need to work on resolutions?
We don't have any
No
quorum.
Okay. Just check.
Are you okay?
I was not acting my age this weekend, and I decided to jet off to Copenhagen.
Oh.
And I thought like, and it's a walking city, so
Yeah.
I averaged about 15,000 steps a day, which is amazing.
Yeah.
And then I remembered like at my age. So I will, I will be sure to see, but I will go back. Famous last. That was, you know, I think Kwame said it, and when that was a lot to process, and folks have a lot to think about. But always happy to be in your company, bringing some news from the high school districts. Next slide, please. We are 47 schools across 7 districts in North Brooklyn, a little under 26,000 kids. Our attendance is staying close to our goal of 90%, with chronic absenteeism staying around 30. About 80% of our students identify as Latinx or Black, about 80% are economically disadvantaged. Next slide, please. And then just as a high school district, our vision and mission is to put forth young adults who have a plan for a post-secondary future, whether that be launching into a career or college, with our school's mission giving them the skills they need for what their next choices will be. Next slide, please. And then we love this time of year. Spring is a time for celebrations and gatherings. So My Brother's Keeper chapters have been very busy in the month of May. We had about 45 students go up to Albany with Dr. Annelle Alston and the State MBK Symposium. One of our students in the top right picture, he's the child to the far left. What hand is this? Left. Jorge from Teachers Prep was actually inducted as a New York State My Brother's Keeper Fellow. So that was super exciting. And then a couple of days later, we brought another group of about 50 students up to SUNY Maritime, which is a really cool campus up in the Bronx. If you haven't seen it, I would encourage you to visit, but they sponsored our leadership retreat where our students had a day of team building and reflecting on their goals as MBK for this past year. Next slide, please. And then your favorite president and mine, Antonio Reynoso, hosted this year about 23 young adults across all of Brooklyn as his youth advisory council. And this was their final meeting that our beautiful deputy superintendent, Dr. Rochelle White, personally chaperoned our kids. We love Antonio and everything he does because he is all about our children. So this was a lovely day that we got to spend in you guys had an event in Maryland. It's impressive, right? Like being a participant of an event in that historic courtroom. We all sit up a little straighter. So our next Morningside session for caregivers is taking place next Tuesday at 6 p.m. The topic is balancing the joys and stresses of caregiving, and it's really intended to be a gift to the caregivers in our districts. Everyone is welcome to attend, so when you receive this deck, you can click on this link and register. It's in Zoom, so you can feel free to kind of turn it on and like do your cooking and cleaning. It's kind of like a radio show. The Morningside facilitators are lovely. They did a great job with the Adolescent Brain series, so we're expecting an equally enjoyable evening around this topic of self-care. So this month, we wanted to share a little more data about priority 4 of our DCAP, which really is kind of the bread and butter of high school districts. So we have set a goal of having 70% of our students across the district participate in advanced courses, whether it be international baccalaureate or advanced placement or dual enrollment college courses, or taking classes at colleges outright. And we have exceeded our goal. Currently, we have close to 75% of students across our district participating in some type of advanced coursework. Next slide, please. And then our buddy, the College Board, every year publishes an annual report. We love it because they give us lots of love and shout outs. So for 2024, we were recognized for our schools offering what the College Board think of as their marquee courses, because AP Seminar, AP Pre-Cal, AP Computer Science principles are non-traditional. They're project-based courses. Students work in groups. They are assessed based on a work product, not just taking an exam. And then AP African American Studies is really a hallmark of our district. It was a course that a group of Brooklyn North High School students challenged the College Board to create, I think about 6 years ago, a group of kids in one of our District 14 schools. Because College Board is always engaging with us, trying to get feedback and how can we do it. And the kids said, why aren't there any courses about us? And College Board took that to heart and they launched a task force. They invited the students and their teacher to be part of the task force. And 2 years ago, they launched a new course, AP African American Studies. In 2024, there were only 200 schools across the country that qualified to offer this course, and 10% of them were Brooklyn North High Schools. There will be a showcase coming up at Barclay Center around the work that our schools do with the Black Studies curriculum from that Black History 365 and also AP African American Studies. So you all will get a personal invitation to see what our kids have done with this content that we've offered them. Sorry, can you go back? Sorry. College Board is also, they're thinking a lot about access. Like Raphael spoke a lot about access, and you guys asked questions about how do we make sure the kids who need it the most have access. And one of the things that College Board has done in recent years is create this Big Future Scholarship opportunity where students who participate in advanced courses can be recognized for performance and for participation. So last year we had 2,329 students participate in the scholarship events, and we had 18 winners, with our kids receiving about $9,500. The National Recognition Program, again, is College Board's way of really trying to show that advanced placement is for everyone. So they honored 75 of our students, African American students, for participation and achieving qualifying scores. 5 Indigenous students, 55 Hispanic, and then my personal favorite category, which they started this year for the first time, is recognizing first-generation students. And these are our newly arrived multilingual learners who are succeeding in courses like AP Seminar and AP Pre-Cal, AP World Language, computer science principles. So that juxtaposition has been gratifying. Next slide, please. And then just honing in a little bit on the numbers. Over the past 5 years, we've increased participation by over 1,000 students across our 47 schools. Next slide, please. And then along with an increase in participation, more students are also achieving qualifying scores, which is a 3 or higher on the culminating exam. Next slide, please. And then a look at the race and ethnicity. We were honored by College Board for the level of participation of our Latinx students. And that in all of the groups, we demonstrated an increase. So the increase, I believe the only 2 groups where we did not have an increase in participation was American Indian and Pacific Islander. Next slide, please. And then always kind of being mindful of who are the kids who are participating. So we, with the help of College Board, kind of compared the ethnicity of the students enrolled in our schools with the proportion of those students who are participating. So while we have lots to celebrate with our Latinx students experiencing advanced placement, Black and African American students continue to be underrepresented. So that's something our district is looking at, and we feel that with courses like AP African American Studies, it will start to see a shift. But a lot of the work, the conversations we have as a district team with our leaders really centers on mindset. Like, do we believe that all students can participate and perform in advanced classes. We got some good feedback from District 16 a couple of weeks ago, that maybe we should have parent workshops. And maybe the mindset issue is not just teachers not thinking kids can do it, but parents need to understand that their personal experience with advanced placement is different than what we're offering our current students. And then also understanding that this, you know, at a kind of banal but important level, it translates into money, right? I could have entered college as a sophomore, purely based on all of the credits I had accumulated in advanced placement. So, and that in itself, is that choice of spending a year less in college or doing the 4 years, but then taking courses that you would never even dream about. That advanced placement is an entry for choices. Next slide, please. And then always looking at gender in addition to race, and we, with our increase in participation, there is parity between our male and female students, about 10% equally, increase in participation and qualifying scores. Next slide, please. And then this is just a map of the performance by ethnicity. Again, our Latinx students, and our Asian students outperform. We're looking at our other subgroups, just trying to pay attention. I think when Principal Figueroa was speaking, I was really impressed with like the level of detail that they're thinking about the students, but like really like student by student. And what Superintendent Ross and our team have been talking about is we need to take that approach with who's doing well and who isn't. And then digging into what the root causes. Some of our District 19 schools are now thinking about starting AP in 9th grade. That you set the expectation, if you're going to say AP is available to all, you don't make it, someone has to decide if Katina is worthy of being in an AP class. It's every 9th grader is going to take AP computer science principles as a foundational experience of our school. So College Board is fascinated. And I think 2 of our schools are going to start there next year. And we're going to see, and District 19 is where there's a large concentration of our African-American students. So we're thinking about that set of schools in that neighborhood, in our 7 districts, as a place to do something different. Next slide. And then the why, just lots of data that shows that experience with AP positively maps to successfully completing college in 4 years. And that's the chart to my right. And then the chart to my left is, it makes sense that the correlation of qualifying scores maps even more strongly to the probability of success in 4 years. Next slide, please. And then what are we doing about it? We are, at this point, I believe all of our schools offer more than 1 AP course. Traditionally, across the country, schools offer 1 AP course. And you have to be selected, you have to earn it, you have to be good enough. We're changing that. We're changing that by offering courses like computer science. All of our students, once they get past Algebra 2, should be taking pre-calc. So instead of taking pre-calc, they can take AP pre-calc. An AP seminar is just an amazing course that's actually content agnostic. It's a way for students to learn. So a lot of our schools have mapped it to 10th grade English as a different way to study literature. It's been matched with some of our Black History 365 work as a preparation for AP African American Studies. And then this idea of, well, when do we begin? Like, when do we allow students to have this experience? So just some things that they're thinking about with College Board. Next slide, please. And then just data for the schools in your district. Really honing in on keeping up with attendance. So both John Jay and Sunset Park are, Pasco Cobble, we're watching them very closely. We recently launched a peer accountability program in our schools with less than 90% attendance, where kids may not listen to grown-ups about coming to school, but maybe if like, I'm just gonna meet Shanice at the bus stop. I could meet Shanice at the bus stop and then she can go, we're going to school. So we paired up students, to see, again, like getting to the granular level of thinking about what is preventing Nancy from getting to school and what can make a difference. So fingers crossed. And then just some updates from some of our schools across your district. There's always lots of fun things going on at DTech and John Jay Law. It's something. And CASA was actually recently celebrated. So 2 years in a row, their film was selected by the mayor's office and honored for the students who produced the work. And this year, the kids were featured on Spectrum, which they were really excited about. And then I wasn't able to go, but apparently there was a night where they showed the students films kind of like in an outdoor venue at a park somewhere. And really treated the kids like the professionals that they dream about being. And then of course in May, the first week of May is always about College Decision Day, so lots of images of how our different schools celebrated that. Next slide, please. Then there's always different ways to stay in touch with us. At your service, Brooklyn North High School. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, any questions from people joining us on Zoom? I think it's just us on Zoom, so let's, interpretation lines. Are there any comments or?
Yeah, Bangla and Spanish were empty.
They were empty, okay. Any comments or questions on the Mandarin line?
No question and comments from the Mandarin line.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the intel. Appreciate it. Any comments or questions from people joining us in person? Okay, we'll start on this side. Nancy, do you have any questions or comments?
Thank you, as always. Appreciate your reports, your updates. So I'm it's pleasant to hear that kids are you're trying to take AP courses and put up those numbers. I appreciate that. And I think doing the comp sci class is just a given, being an AP, because I think there can be like a sense that it's like not for me, I can't do it, it's too hard. So if they at least are all taking this one AP course, it destigmatizes it. So that's a great idea. I saw that my son like took the SAT in school and was, also had some prep support in school, and I thought that was amazing. And while we have the resources to do something outside, many families do not. I think that's so important. So as long as schools are looking at these tests to do that, I would hope for the day when we're actually prepping kids for the SHSAT, because that still is economically unfair for our kids. But I really appreciate the strides that you're making and the efforts you're putting in towards equity and advancing our kids in their education. And I love your idea of getting Nancy to go to school because she's meeting with a friend, because kids really, and that's really thinking out of box, but really like being creative, because like kids are so peer oriented at this age. And sometimes going to school feels so overwhelming peer wise. And so I think that's a great idea. So thank you. I appreciate your update.
I just had one question / thought. So I used to teach in AP for all school, and one of the big debates that we always had was we wanted to provide access and equity for all of our students to be able to take these courses. But then there was the question of when they're taking these courses, we really should be trying to prepare all of them to get that 3 or higher. So as they're planning to, for many of the students to transition to college, so they can get the credits to do what you described. And there was a lot of debate about what that role and what that purpose is. So I was curious on your thoughts on the discussions and dialogue that you and your office are having in your schools about how to both open up AP so that it is accessible for everybody while also attempting in some way to support students to try to get that 3 or higher so that they can get the college credit at a lot of the colleges they might go to.
So twofold, right? One, as long as these paper and pencil tests exist, test taking skills is a genre.
Right.
Right? So just like we do for the regions, just like we do with our 8th grade exams and our 4th grade exams, we make it not foreign.
Yeah.
Right? We have teachers create classwork and homework that mirrors what the kids will experience so that you're not walking into a room and sitting down and seeing a question format for the first time. So, and that's just survival still. And I come from a consortium school where totally ready to take my money. I actually think kids needed state tests. But it's a reality because colleges still assess that way, like it trickles down. So making sure our kids have the skills they need to succeed in whichever way somebody is going to demand of them is part of our job. The exciting thing is that College Board is thinking about it and they're creating courses like AP Seminar and even AP African American Studies. It's not just a test, there's a research project that you do as a group and you present. AP seminars like that, and even AP Pre-Cal to some extent. So, and that for years and years, all us anti-testing people, it's like, we're like the kids, right? Like, why do I need to learn this? How am I gonna use it? So I think it's a balance of both. But I do think there is mindset work to be done with our adults.
Yeah.
And that's what we spend a lot of time thinking about.
I say this as someone who taught AP and is also anti-testing, and so it was very contradictory where I was like, I don't agree with this, but I want you to get that 3 for the sake of you, even though I don't believe in it, and it's.
I want you to know that you can conquer this thing. It's kind of like the way we think about it, like, if we never want kids to think that any test will make or break them. And my friend Seneca said it the last time when he was here with me, he was like, I want kids to walk into any situation and feel the confidence that I have what I need to conquer this. But someday, maybe after I retire to Copenhagen, because it does trickle down, right? Like as long, like I had the great privilege of going to an amazing university, but you know what the most popular class was? 300 kids in a lecture hall.
Yeah.
Right, with the one-arm banded chairs and this incredible professor lecturing and you're copying down notes.
Yeah.
And your entire grade is based on your midterm and final. So if academia is going to continue in that fashion, we want to make sure our kids are ready for it, but then we also want to balance it with like amazing learning experiences that help them understand that learning is not just putting paper to pencil.
And that also points to how higher ed needs to change and not teach like that anymore. But that's a different discussion. Yeah. Tina?
Thank you. I just had a small question that I've wondered about for a while but never asked. My brother's keeper and my sister's keeper seem like such amazing programs. I'm wondering if there's a version that isn't gendered for kids who might be non-binary.
So kids self-select.
Okay.
Right, so in each school, The structures came from the Obama administration and the way the state names their chapters. It's also not the only student leadership opportunities in our schools, so my brother's keeper, my sister keeper is one way students can be leaders. We recently launched, finally, after dreaming about it for a couple of years, a student empowerment leadership council, where each school, and this is beyond, every school has student government. We have schools that participate in like they're all the standard high school things. But we came up with this idea of having kind of like Antonio's Youth Advisory Council. And we convened them about a month ago. I think 95 kids showed up and worked across schools to identify what they thought were pressing issues for our district, and then come up with solutions. We're actually meeting with them again tomorrow, because then their homework was to then take this thing that like 6 schools got together and created an idea, and there was a lot of talk about need for mental health supports. There was a lot of talk about health and wellness in school. So they came up with ideas and proposals, and then they had to go back to their schools to share it with their administration and their student government, whatever their school structures are. So that is not gender based. And then we also have lots and lots of clubs across our school. Thank you.
Those MBK look really sharp in that photo.
Yeah.
It's impressive, yeah. Actually, tomorrow, our MSK, so their culminating event each year is a crowning ceremony. And it'll be at the Jefferson campus. I think we have about 300 young women coming. Those will be the pictures with.
Then Jonathan, when you raised the question about debating about how much support to give students to achieve high test scores, I was reminded, I was in a very small fishing village once in Nova Scotia, having a conversation with some educators. And they had 8 kids in the entire school system, which like it's one room schoolhouse in Nova Scotia. And they're like, we make sure that every single one of those 8 kids passes their version of like, it sounded like it was something like a Regents exam for chemistry or whatever. They make sure that those 8 kids get everything they need to pass that exam. Now, obviously, you don't want to overemphasize the pressure or whatever, but I don't think we never want to be rationing the support. We want to give, and I don't even think we should be worried, having a debate about it. Like, we should just be giving them everything they need to do as well as they possibly can.
As long as someone's out there judging them that way.
Right, I mean, if you have to take that test, we should make sure you have the tools you need. So I didn't realize that that students were selected for AP.
Most schools do it.
I didn't know that. Do they have to pay to take the AP exam?
No.
Okay, so it's free, because I think when I took it as a kid, I had to pay to take the actual exam, I think.
I think you still do, just not in New York City.
Just not in New York City.
In New York City, a lot of schools have a deal with the College Board that
Okay.
they will cover the cost of the exam.
Okay, so
Is
when?
that correct? Okay.
When can we expect that change? That the kid can select to take the AP rather than be selected to the guidance counselor.
Yeah, so some of our schools are doing it.
Yeah.
Like, some of our schools are using like AP seminar as a 10th grade experience that all students have access to.
It's a real entry point for bias.
Yeah, it always has been.
Yeah.
Right? Like kids like me always got picked.
Yeah.
Right? Because I was quiet in class and I did all my homework and my parents didn't call the principal.
Yeah.
And that's actually kind of what Jonathan was mentioning. For schools that also get judged by numbers and metrics, that there's a economies of scale, right? Like if I'm investing in an AP class, I want the kids to do well. So I'm gonna pick the kid, and schools come up with different rules. But having been a big believer of the four alls before they all fell apart. In a city like this, where we just sort kids every which way.
Yeah.
The only way to change that really is, and so accountability changes all the time. I like schools. The way we judge schools is on the backs of kids. So there is some risk to schools to taking an open strategy, because there will be some bean counter somewhere counting it.
But if you just had prerequisites, you know, if you just said, well, if you're gonna take AP calculus, you have to have taken regular calculus first, or, I don't know.
Yeah, but that again is sorting, right?
But some schools do it, so they're gonna be being counted, right? So, but they're still doing it. I know my kids' school, you can just take it. Is this still the case with regions?
Yeah, but-
Everyone now take the regions class in
No.
the middle, your high school, I know.
Say it again?
Is this the case with regions also, or can any kid take a regions class in middle school?
We have it where kids can take the regions.
Anyone now, because I know there was just some schools
Yeah,
that
no.
did that,
Yeah.
now it's across the board.
Can we?
When
Yeah,
that's
sorry, do you wanna say something?
Yeah, we came because there was the resolution on the charter.
We don't have quorum, but you can make public comment during public comment period.
Tell me that you're over an hour on schedule. I have two kids.
Okay.
I'm sorry. There were many more parents here, and yeah, many probably stretching.
Okay, there was one other, who was a reporter
Yeah.
for the charter resolution. She left.
What's that?
Parents come out of the field and talking about it.
Okay.
And it's really, you know, I mean, I think that if this is a forum for parents. It doesn't mean that for all kinds of honestly. Really, it's. I have to look at that, and I've been sitting here and I look there.
Okay. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, I just wanna say,
If you.
we apologize. We knew we didn't have quorum when we said that at the beginning, so we knew that we wouldn't get to the resolutions, and I think we should have just been more clear about that. Because of that, we weren't as worried about the time, because we knew that we couldn't get to the resolutions, so we allowed the discussions to go on longer for the superintendent.
But you could have asked the parents what they were here for, and people, this is my first time coming to meetings, I have no idea what's going on, we were just looking at the agenda.
Yeah.
Hoping to eventually get a chance to talk about the resolution.
Would you like to
Yes,
speak?
would you like to?
Yeah.
If you have a few more minutes, I understand.
Yeah.
I'll just mention that there was a reporter here also who was waiting and she left. I don't know if that matters. She's not here anymore.
I mean, I don't know, like.
She was here for the
Yeah.
discussion. No doubt we'll be back.
You Ed, is that okay?
Kwame, is that okay?
Yeah.
If you would like to speak.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, thanks, you,
Thank you, Ed. Thank you, Ed.
Thank you.
I feel bad because the reporter's gone.
Yeah.
You might want to take.
Yeah.
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 We can't vote, yeah.
The floor is
Yeah.
yours.
I mean, it's my first meeting that I got to, and I wanted to register my concern about the charter school that's planned for where the gas station was, 40th Street and 4th Avenue. My son goes to 16, which is 2 blocks away. There were several new schools that were constructed in the area. I think 5, maybe 6. My son's school is under construction. And so the issue now with schools is that they're underfunded, and there's fewer students able to attend because of the rising cost of rent. And then now this charter school is planned, and everyone was really surprised by it, because a couple weeks ago I found the gas station boarded up. I thought it was interesting. Had no idea like what it was gonna turn into. I figured it was gonna be housing. And I contacted the, oh, and then it was on Facebook that I found out that there was a new charter school. Not through any official venue, not through the community board, not through anything else, Facebook, because the principal was, you know, trying to get students, to attend. And so then I contacted the council member's office and they got the lot for the gas station. Withstanding, they got it to busing as well. And so they were also quite surprised. And yeah, I mean, my own son's school, we don't have a science degree this year. They're not funded. And that's gonna continue being a problem, if we lose students because of the charter school, that their day ends up being taught. And our schools can't do that, especially when, the nonprofit that provides after school services, CFL, they lost the federal grants, and that might not exist as well. So there's a lot of concerns, not to mention that it is sitting on top of the gas station, as people mentioned. There's not enough time for the community to have input. It's not needed. In Principal's own presentation, the English language learners at her school underperformed the district school by 11 full points. So this is a community of English language learners, so the charter school is not going to serve our students as well as our public schools are, and yet they're going to deplete resources from our public school. And there are eloquent, point stuff, budgeting and stuff like that. I'll say this, that being in this building is wonderful for me. When my son, 10 years ago, when my son was in kindergarten, Sunset Park in 924 kindergarten. And that doesn't even include the hundreds, and at that point, hundreds who were not able to take. And instead we're overlooked and hurt. And I was one of the parents who stood across the street and looked at this when it was in C-Town to the kid. And we texted the superintendent, we texted the school construction authority, we filed what was a brand new PS 516 when the chancellor was in town, to demand for the school. So we got them. And this is one of them. We were in this beautiful, I remember a very beautiful visioning project at 516, but we imagined all of it with this one. It included a swimming pool. It's the bummer the school doesn't have a swimming pool. And that was, you know, that was the hat I wore with regard to education. And how I came to now, I'm an employee, but I'm speaking tonight completely 100% as a parent with a broken back, who, when I get mad, I do math research. And lots of times, so I look, and the charter school that's going in had paid $700,000 in rent in 2022. In 2023, it paid $1 million. Their budget is 97% reimbursed from the city and state budget. That's us. That is how they're building school. It's through our tax dollars. It is not, they don't have a grant. And when in doing that research, I also looked at the other charter school, which is in Sunset Park, which is just got a $10 million loan to renovate their building on Fifth Avenue. Again, that's a loan. These are developers who are so confident that they're going to get a return on their investment in a neighborhood that desperately needs affordable housing, that they're willing to go to that length and have the city bank for it, because they know they can just do it. There's nobody to approve it. There's no way the school construction authority will build another school in Sunset Park. We have in Sunset Park, 85% of the classes this year met the class size law. Next year, with the new initiative, it'll be close to 95% in this neighborhood. We don't need another school, and they can just do it without any scrutiny, and then we as taxpayers put the bill. They don't go through the district planning, it would allow us to decide what kind of schools now we need to do here in Sunset Park, now that we have high schools and it's a shrinking population, they're not part of it. And that has to come, that's why it's really important to have this conversation on charter financing and charter.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry again that, you know what, at our next meeting, we'll just add, I'll just put a section for this, for public comment, near the top. And you guys can just have at it.
And if you're not able to make it, we can recap what you said tonight. as
Or
well.
you can call in, you
Yeah.
can come onto the Zoom.
Last meeting of the year, if you're okay, I can go last, yeah.
Okay.
The
Hopefully,
last
yeah.
meeting of the year. so.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that I wholeheartedly support your viewpoint. I sometimes sit and watch the news and I see these commercials for Success Charter Academy. And I'm like, who's paying for that commercial? And it's the taxpayer who's paying for that commercial. Absolutely. They also don't have the oversight that public school systems have. And they can just pick their kids and they don't have to meet the kids where they are. Like, there's just so much wrong. And it's all not transparent. And I'm really sorry that this is happening in your community, but I'm just like, I hear you and I support, this resolution and what you're saying, like 100%. I thank you for being here.
Yeah.
I know that Javier Salamanca kind of was coming in and out of the Zoom meeting. I don't know if he's
He's not there.
He's not there right now. But that's too bad. I know he wanted to say something too. So I'll just put you guys on the agenda for the 17th. How's that?
Great.
I
And Joanne, just for the suggestion that we had talked about.
Yeah.
This is a charter that was in District 20, so on the other side of Sunset Park, so that you're aware. It kind of got pushed out to some extent for some of the reasons that you explained in here. And the other thing that helped push out is the large number of community members and parents that not only went to their elected officials, but also went to community boards and packed the rooms and packed the house and made it a big deal, to the point that you're talking about. I think more so of this is oversaturated here, there's not a need, because how many of the charters get their spaces is around not only need, but also a need to be able to have higher performance. So like as a superintendent in District 7, I have the largest number of charters in the city for District 7, because everyone's application said, this is the poorest congressional district in the United States, it needs help, so therefore we need a charter. What was happening was a lot of the children going to the charter were not even from District 7, it was housed in District 7 because they used that in the application, but the kids that went there were from all the districts across the Bronx. And so, one of the ways I was able to start slowing that down was having a large number of my community out and about, making a big stink about why are we putting another school yet in a 4-block radius of 5 schools or 6 schools that are servicing the same population and with class sizes not even a need. So to Antonio's, to the point, you need to get not 2 or 3 parents, you need to get a room of 100, 200 parents, 300 parents who are the days of when you can fill an entire auditorium full of parents about the same thing is when that voice is probably going to be heard more. You want to do it sooner than later. To that point, Antonio reached out to me to let me know, were you aware of this charter? I wasn't, because I wasn't notified. Normally, when it's a SUNY or state charter, I'm notified of the public hearing that's going to happen. This seems not to be that process for this particular. So nothing has happened, right? So nothing's happened because they're trying to petition support for this particular charter at that location. They're petitioning support. So they've gone to the community board. I've already spoken to the community board members. They're not for it, but that doesn't mean that it still can't happen. They go through a process of public display of need and wants and proposals. So it's not guaranteed that it's gonna be there. I just want you to be clear on that there's no guarantee on it. It is something they want. So that's why you need to activate communities,
And I
not
think I
a
heard,
community, communities.
I think I heard you both speak at the CD7 meeting,
Yeah.
right? I mean, you've been active in the process, just to like,
Yeah.
to reflect.
I-
your point.
yeah.
I don't know if it was the same comments, but I remember hearing something from
Okay,
that.
yeah, just that, there's a lot that I know my school's struggling with at the moment, advocating for Bell, so, but this is also the priority, and so what questions do you recommend people ask during the community board meeting?
I think that's a good one to ask, but I think you have to understand the process behind the charters first, so that you know how to address what they're trying to do. So one of the things that you want to do first is really go online and think about what is the process to be able to have a charter school in New York City, as opposed to New York State, right? Because there's a different process in New York City than there is for the entire state. Understand what the process and the steps that have to be taken to solidify the process. And then at each avenue, what are the approaches that this place has to take in order to get through that process? Identify what their next steps are, and then address the gaps. And I think when you go with a large constituency, and you activate your council members, your assembly members, it's not just the local city council, it's also your state assembly members, because a lot of charters are being approved by the state, not necessarily the city. The city has to actually implement them if they're approved. The state usually approves the charter school, not the city. We just have to make sure we provide the space, and if we can't provide the space, in some cases, if it's a public charter school, we pay. Not all cases do we pay for all charter schools in New York City. That's why we try to house them in schools that are underutilized. That's why you see charter schools in DOE sites, because it's cheaper to place them in a building that already exists for the Department of Ed, as opposed to paying for their rent in an extravagant place that costs millions of dollars.
So the school, it already exists in the district, I believe, but not in People Park.
Not in,
They already have their foot, I believe.
They already have a charter.
Yeah.
They already have a charter. They're gonna seek a revision to expand to a middle school. That will require some sort of a hearing, and SUNY or regions, I don't remember which one authorized RISE, they'll have to
They may
approve it.
They don't have sixth grade this year.
Probably.
Yeah.
They do already have fifth grade? Oh, so they may not even need.
no, I believe that they have the K to 5, because remember, historic public schools are K to 5, I mean K to 6, not K to 5. That's become something new that's been over the past 15 to 20 years that we've started moving away from having sixth grade at elementary school level. But we've always had K to 6. So what's happening now is that they have the sixth grade, but that doesn't necessarily mean they have the space for the remainder of it, which is why they're asking for the proposal to add 7th and 8th grade. The new building is the way that they're gonna say they'd be able to house all the particular students. Right, so they are in the area, but they're in the borderline of our area, so they're part of District 20, not District 15. It just happens to be in a subset. So we're looking at geographical districts for public schools, and then you're looking at districts in terms of neighborhood. So, and in terms of neighborhood, they're in Sunset Park, yes. In terms of their school, it's ideally on the borderline of already District 20.
So
But they
that's,
sit right here in Sunset Park.
but now they're currently more closer to, yes, then.
They're in downtown.
Yeah.
They're in
They're
downtown.
downtown.
The state doesn't really care that much about the geographical location in terms of a CSD where a charter is. I mean, Brooklyn Prospect moved all over the
Yeah,
place.
and they're still moving all over.
And when I talked to SUNY about it, they were like, it's close enough, as long as it's in the borough. They didn't really care that they were moving over the border into District 13 and not staying, they don't.
But I
SUNY doesn't-
believe there is a cap for the number of charter schools still with the state in terms of the law. That's why you have to look deeper into.
No, we've met the cap. Like, we've hit the cap. They can't open a new school, and they don't need to open a new
Right.
school. They're good to go for as many grades as they can fiscally expand to, because they just file the revision with the state and they just give it to them. That they can go up to 12th grade if they want under
What
the law.
prevents the most is getting as many parents in an uproar
Yes.
about their community being impacted. That I can tell you is the number one most efficient way
to get the elected officials who need your vote to actually stay in office to say, I'm gonna fight this to back off. That's really where the power comes in play. Where I've seen charters not successfully go through is when the community is hell bent out of shape that you can't do this to us. And it's a collective community of everybody, not just parents and schools, but communities that next door neighbors, the school is being built next to my house, all the things that impact a particular neighborhood and community. That's what's gonna make the difference. Your elected officials hearing it, but again, not just local city officials only.
Yeah.
You need your state assembly members and your state senators to be involved in it.
All right, so we can't, we've already established that we can't, do any of these resolutions. We're pretty much over time, but I just wanted to let you guys know to please, start your superintendent evaluation form. You all received the link. If you have questions about how to use the superintendent evaluation form, the spreadsheet that I sent you, discuss that with me offline. Otherwise, I hope some of you will come to the field day at Prospect Park on June 6th. I will be there. And I look forward to seeing you all at our business meeting on June 10th. That will be our, Contracts for Excellence hearing. And our last meeting is June 17th. That is my last meeting on this council. I hope some folks will come and say goodbye to me. So see you all soon. I'm gonna close out this meeting at 9:36. Good night, everybody.
Thank you.